American comic, I'm lost, I'm surrounded by superheroes with father issues. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 626, Call Peter to deal with the Homelanders. What if I don't do that? Siri's eyes narrowed slightly under her silver gray hair. Are you going to attack me, Homelander? You can try, Siri. Since you think I'm not a good person, then, you can try whether I will attack you, but for my father's sake, I won't let you get hurt too badly. As he spoke, the red light in Homelander's eyes became brighter, and a fake smile appeared on his face. Siri didn't say anything. While watching Homelander vigilantly, he slowly reached out to the sword of Gryffindor in his left hand. Zizzy, the moment the hot sight shot out of Homelander's eyes, Siri suddenly pulled out the sword of Gryffindor and rolled to the side. The hot sight burned on the floor, burning a hole. After dodging Homelander's attack, Siri stretched out her body like a predatory viper, and moved nimbly towards Homelander, stabbing the opponent with a sharp sword directly. Although Siri moved nimbly, Homelander's super speed was faster than her. Homelander dodged Siri's attack and punched Siri with a bang. At the critical moment, when she was about to be hit by Homelander, the power of the ancient blood in Siri's body was instantly activated. The blood of the elves, as the source of magic, brought Siri a powerful source of magic. The ancient blood she carried, the Laura gene, possessed powerful and incredible magic. Siri's mother Pavetta, without any magic training, could release the power to almost destroy a castle. Her great-grandmother, the prophet Idalia, was also a magic source, and she could lift the drawbridge by raising her eyebrows. Although Siri is still in the stage of exploring her own abilities. But she no longer regards her abilities as curses, and has gradually explored her own magical power. She used the space teleportation ability that was sometimes effective and sometimes not. Whoosh, Siri's figure flashed away from the original place. The next second Siri teleported to the other side of the farmyard. Siri's sudden flashing ability suddenly appeared in front of Homelander. The red light flashing in his eyes faded away, and Homelander looked at the other party in astonishment. He had always thought that Siri only had the ability to travel through time and space, but he didn't expect that the other party could also teleport in space. This was obviously not the ability given to her by compound number 5. Siri's performance made Homelander believe that she had the ability to travel through time and space. Very good, Miss Siri, you have successfully aroused my interest. I mean, now I'm going to start to be serious. Homelander's eyes showed a serious expression, and he suddenly activated his super speed. The air fluctuated, and the next second Homelander appeared in front of Siri. Siri, who was caught off guard, was pushed back suddenly. With a bang, Siri fell heavily to the ground and rolled backwards along the soft ground. Although he attacked Siri, considering the relationship between Peter and Siri, Homelander did not use cruel means on her. Rolling, Siri hit the ash tree in the courtyard and stopped. Regardless of the pain in her body, Siri immediately stood up and endured the pain to activate her teleport again. Homelander had just used his super speed to move in front of Siri, and Siri, who had activated the ability of teleportation in advance, had already left the farm. Homelander was slightly stunned when he saw Siri teleporting away from the farm. Then he raised his head and looked around. His super vision passed through the fence and saw Siri teleporting outside the farm. Shaking his head, Homelander dodged and chased after Siri. Since he had already torn his face with Siri, he would naturally not let Siri leave here smoothly. Bang! The air made a bang. When Homelander appeared, he was already in front of Siri. Siri was outside the farm and was about to run away. Her eyes blurred and she saw Homelander appear in front of her. She didn't expect the other party to be so fast. Without caring about anything else, Siri was about to continue to activate the teleportation ability to leave, but Homelander reached out and grabbed her before she activated the ability. He grabbed Siri's clothes, and just when he thought he could easily catch Siri, there was a sound of breaking air in the air. Whoosh, a tentacle with a sticky liquid came directly to attack Homelander. The Homelander, who had not expected to be attacked by the tentacles, was hit and flew out. Shocked, Siri looked up and saw Xingguang, a man wearing a black coat, with a somewhat disgusting tentacle growing out of his body and a full beard. Xingguang, Siri was shocked when she saw Xingguang appear. Xingguang, whose eyes were flashing with lightning, did not greet Siri. With an angry roar, Xinguang burst out with strong lightning all over his body and attacked the Homelander who was lying on the ground. The dazzling electric current with crackling lightning pierced the surrounding air and covered the Homelander in an instant. With a boom, the air exploded under the impact of the lightning. The surrounding ground shook violently, and countless oil fluttered into the sky. After Xinguang released his ultimate move, the bearded man grabbed the towering tree on the side of the road and rolled it into two pieces. With a crack, the thick tree trunk was directly and neatly broken into two halves by the tentacles. Then the bearded man smashed the thick tree at the lying Homelander. A deafening sound echoed in the air. In the distance, there was the roar of a car. Siri was shocked to see a black SUV speeding over. Huey, who was sitting in the driver's seat, stepped on the brakes and shouted to the stunned Siri, "Get in the car. Quick!" Siri was stunned for a moment and ran towards the black SUV. After Siri got in the car, Starlight and the bearded man also came and got in the car. After stepping on the accelerator, the group immediately left the farm at the fastest speed. After a while, Homelander knocked the tree that was pressing on him away and soared into the sky from the buried environment. Landing on the ground, ignoring the mud on his body, Homelander exhaled angrily. "It seems that we arrived in time." In the speeding car, Starlight breathed a sigh of relief and said to Siri, "You guys." Siri turned his eyes to Huey who was driving and the bearded man who was sitting in the back seat without saying a word, and asked Starlight, "Are these the members of the Black Robe Patrol you mentioned?" "Yes, but not all of them." Huey, who was driving, turned to Siri and said, "I'm Huey Campbell." After Huey introduced himself, the bearded man said to Siri, "Butcher, but I think maybe you shouldn't be called the Butcher." Starlight couldn't help but complain, "It should be called Tumor Butcher." Facing Starlight's complaints, the Butcher showed a half smile and responded to her, "Yes, I think this name is good, but you have to be careful, girl. My tumor tentacles are out of control, due to the frequent use of compound number 5 before. Butcher has cancer." Compound number 5 filled his brain with cancer cells, and under the influence of compound number 5, super tentacles were born. The tentacles with powerful strength can easily tear a thick tree in half. Although the cancer tentacles can easily tear a tree in half, they also have fatal flaws. With the spread of cancer cells and the frequent use of the cancer tentacles, another dark personality has gradually emerged in the Butcher's body. In addition, his life is running out. However, the Butcher did not tell Huey and the Black Robe team about this. "Anyway, Siri, I just hope you are safe." Starlight did not continue to talk to the Butcher about the cancer tentacles, but cast her eyes on Siri. "Homelander, he has been lying all the time," Siri still said to Starlight in disbelief. She couldn't believe that Homelander had been acting with a mask on. In fact, he has restrained himself a lot. Huey turned around and said to Siri, "After Soldier Boy was defeated, he was honest for a while, but soon he couldn't control himself." Siri asked in surprise, "Why? Because he made some heartfelt words on the show, or you could call them dirty words. He thought he was courting death, but it made him more popular. His supporters called it brave to be yourself, so this guy started to act recklessly again. I think someone has to deal with him and let him know that he is not invincible." Starlight listened to Huey's words and said to Siri, "It's actually very easy to understand. Homelander has obvious antisocial attributes and is a vicious narcissist, but he actually shows fragility and desires attention. He also has typical fragile narcissistic personality disorder characteristics. Vicious narcissists generally do not need external support to be self-indulgent, but Homelander realized that even if he acted recklessly, he could fool the ignorant and fanatical American people with just a few words, so he became more and more out of control." Starlight now turned into a psychoanalyst, guessing the reasons for Homelander's psychological changes. Seeing that Siri was lost in thought, Starlight added, "We speculate that he even dares to kill the presidential candidate in order to control the American political world. The belief in his heart seems to be constantly strengthened. I can do whatever I want, I am superior, and ordinary people are lowly." Butcher waited for Starlight to finish speaking, and a sneer appeared on his face, then let him know how powerful ordinary people are. He originally wanted to say something contemptuous of Homelander, but when he thought that he had become the cancer tentacle man now, he had to swallow what he wanted to say. Siri sat in the car, looking at the scenery flashing quickly outside. After thinking for a moment, he said to everyone, "As long as we bring Peter back, he can deal with Homelander. Didn't he say that Peter is his father? It shouldn't be a problem for a father to deal with his son." Chapter 627. Clark doesn't want to be Superman. You mean Peter Patrick? The butcher was stunned and asked Siri. Yes, he said his father is Peter Patrick. I think this feeling is not fake. Siri thought about what he said to Homelander before, and said to Huey and the others, I can travel through time and space, and go to Peter's world to seek help from my teacher. Hearing Siri asking for help from Peter, Huey turned around and asked Siri curiously, Miss Siri, what is your relationship with Mr. Patrick? He is my teacher. Siri thought for a while and added, not only a teacher, he is also a father figure to me. Seeing Siri's gentle eyes, Xingguang, who had attended the adult senior party with Peter, asked her, Siri, what kind of person is Mr. Patrick in your eyes? Hearing Starlight's question, Siri fell into deep thought. After a while, she said to Starlight, He is an extraordinary person. He is very powerful. He has long been indifferent to the good and evil in the world. He has his own views on things. He is humorous in his words. When necessary, he can be cold and silent. You can't see a hint of what he wants to express from his actions. You can only see a slight change from his expression. He can also be careful to complete a set of perfect guidance for your life from your clothes, words, troubles, accommodation, life, help, etc. He doesn't care whether you are poor or rich. As long as you can get his recognition and what you ask for is reasonable, he will do it for you. Siri recalled the time she spent with Peter, and a faint smile appeared on her face. He taught me to still believe in hope after seeing the darkness of human nature. Siri's words made everyone fall into silence. Starlight took a deep breath and turned to look at the scenery outside the moving car. She didn't know Peter very well, but she could see that Siri's feelings for Peter should be more than just a father and a teacher. Patrick Farm. Peter was playing Gwent with Clark. Clark did not go to Piltover University for class because it was the weekend. Peter looked at Clark, who was in deep thought, and played a Gwent card of Geralt of Rivia. Seeing the card with an attack power of 15, Clark showed a shocked expression on his face. Godfather, when did you get this card? Clark asked him in surprise. He remembered that when Sahai played cards with a Godfather, the Godfather did not have this card. Sira gave it to me when she left. Peter's eyebrows moved. Why, do you have any objection? On the farm, in addition to Peter, Clark has also become addicted to Gwent recently. Because of his addiction to Gwent, he even spent less time with Lana and Louise. But this is normal. After all, Henry Cavill, who plays Superman, not only transformed into Superman to save the world on the screen, but also made a cameo appearance as Geralt in the Witcher world. Superman became a Witcher in one leap. Now Clark likes Gwent and the Witcher, which is probably a fate from his previous life. Stroking his chin, Peter suddenly thought, the actor who plays Superman also likes Warhammer. Could it be that Clark has an indissoluble bond with the Warhammer world? Being looked at by Peter with strange eyes, Clark felt a little confused and asked, What's wrong, Godfather? No, I just thought of something else. Peter turned his eyes away from Clark, thought for a while and asked him, Do you like tabletop chess games, Clark? Clark didn't know why Peter asked him this question, but nodded and said, Yes. I like tabletop chess games too, Godfather, although I rarely play with others. Azu doesn't like the table flag, and I can't find a suitable game partner. You know, Godfather, if my brain runs at high speed, it always makes me think of a lot, and my thinking becomes agile, so ordinary people can't beat me. Ever since playing intellectual games like chess, I realized that I am different from ordinary people. In fact, I am not an ordinary person. Clark told Peter his inner thoughts, but in a sense, I think I am also an ordinary person. I am not nobler or superior than ordinary people. Peter put down the Gwent cards in his hand and said to Clark, Oh, I'm not surprised that you think so, because Clark, you are a Superman. Superman. Clark repeated the word and said to Peter in a depressed mood, Actually, I don't want to be Superman. Godfather, you don't want to be Superman. Peter was shocked when he heard Clark's words. Are you itching for trouble? You're not going to say to yourself that you feel the responsibility of Superman is too tiring, are you? Yes, after the Injustice world, I know that all Clarks will become Superman. Clark raised his head and looked into Peter's eyes, but has anyone really cared about Superman? No one really cares about Superman. Those who say they care, don't care about Superman. Even if they think they care, they don't really care. Because Godfather, I think no one except you understands what's truly special about Superman. Clark's eyes revealed sadness. When I first awakened my abilities as a child, I would frequently get into trouble because I couldn't control my extraordinary superpowers. When I was young and frivolous and encountered criminals for the first time, I would be regarded as a monster because of my childish sense of justice and inappropriate actions. When I first injured other people's doubts, when I first acted as a hero, no one knows this, and no one cares, but Godfather, you care. When I blame myself, you will say to him, maybe this is a good thing, you know. Who wants to be ordinary? Maybe it's better to be different. When I'm confused, you will tell me, believe that there are still people who are not that bad. Clark, I want you to be a believer and defender, even if the opponent is a monster. Looking into Peter's eyes, Clark paused and expressed his true feelings for Peter. Godfather, no one cares about Superman, only you will care about Clark Kent, so compared to being Superman, I would rather accompany you in Smallville, protect you, and we will go on adventures in different worlds together, with John, Star-Lord, Loki, Raven and Boom. Peter, he didn't expect Clark to have such an idea. Superman doesn't want to save the world, but wants to be a cowboy on the farm for life. Although Clark's words touched him a little, he felt that he had to give Clark some chicken soup. Otherwise, he was really worried that Clark would not be able to become Superman. Clark, you will become a spiritual role model for people. Peter put his hand on Clark's shoulder and said, your future is not limited to me and Smallville. You should have a more magnificent life. Clark hesitated and asked Peter, Godfather, the me in your heart, I mean, what kind of Superman do you expect? The Superman I want to see. Peter was stunned by Clark's question, and organized his words and said, he can make the right decision at any time. Saving is always better than defeating for him. He will not let his victorious posture stand on the ruins of the city, nor will he lose the origin of kindness because of the evil seduction. He wants to be a hero, not for revenge, nor to fill the emptiness, but because doing so will make him feel that his life is more meaningful. With a smile on his lips, Peter's eyes revealed a hint of relief. He would be busy around the world, feeling tired, sitting on the roof of Metropolis, and seemed to be a little confused about the good and evil in the world, but when he saw the sun rise as usual, he would still smile contentedly. Good morning. Patting Clark on the shoulder, Peter said to him, but you don't have to be anyone I expect, Clark. You can be whoever you want to be according to your own wishes. Aren't you worried that I will become bad, Godfather? No. Peter shook his head and said, because I believe that my Clark did not accidentally burst out with the idea of upholding justice because of any external trauma or coincidence. His kindness and perseverance are rooted in himself. My Clark is a person from Smallville with the best superpowers. His absolute power does not cause absolute corruption. On the contrary, absolute power keeps him away from fear, greed and hatred. Godfather, Clark suddenly felt a little sour in his nose after being touched by Peter's sincere heart. He didn't expect that the Godfather understood, trusted and loved him more than he thought. What the Godfather said made him even more reluctant to leave Smallville and go to Metropolis to be Superman. Clark was just being moved when a wave of vibrations came from the air. Then, in the astonished eyes of Peter and Clark, a portal suddenly opened. Siri, who had already left, walked out of the portal with a sort of Gryffindor on her back. Siri, Peter looked at Siri in surprise. How come his Swift came back so soon? Teacher, Siri excitedly stepped forward and hugged Peter. I guess you must have run into some trouble, right? After hugging Siri, Peter said to her. Yes, I have run into some trouble. It's about you, teacher. Siri took a deep breath and narrated to Peter what she had encountered in the Black Robe world. Is it the Black Robe Azu? After listening to this, Peter fell into deep thought. He didn't expect that Siri could accidentally enter the Black Robe world. Will Siri enter the world before he saw the meteor shower and traveled through it one day? Throwing the messy thoughts out of his mind, Peter raised his head and said to Clark in a serious tone, Clark, follow Siri back to the Black Robe world first. I need to prepare some things and I will rush over later. Quotation mark. Chapter 628 Clark, you've been pretending all along. You can actually fly a long time ago. Hearing Peter asking Clark to follow him back first, Siri asked worriedly, Teacher, is there a problem? No, I'm fine. I'll go there later. You and Clark go first. I know how to travel to the Black Robe world. Peter comforted Siri. Don't worry, Clark is a trustworthy person. Now there are only Peter, Clark and Persephone in the farm. Raven and the other four are only in Hogwarts, while Zoo, Star-Lord, Boom, and V are going to see the newly released movie. Now only Clark can help. And Peter believes that Clark, who has been to the Black Robe world, should not have any problems. After experiencing adventures in many worlds, he believes that Clark has grown a lot. Okay, teacher, I will wait for you. Although Siri is a little worried, she still chooses to believe Peter. Opening the portal, Clark followed Siri into the Black Robe world. Siri didn't know much about Clark. She only knew that he was Peter's godson and had followed Peter since he was a child at Patrick's farm. Although he is not his biological son, he is better than his biological son. As for his ability, it should be similar to Zoo. He has super speed and super strength that ordinary people can't imagine, and his eyes can shoot flames. It seems that compared to Azu, his only shortcoming is that he can't fly. In Siri's opinion, Clark is more like an ordinary small-town teenager. Like most teenagers in small towns, he has all kinds of troubles and a warm smile on his face. In general, he is a sunny boy who is more normal than his countrymen. Actually, I have been to this world. After entering the Black Robe world, Clark said to Siri. Have you been to this world? Yes, John has been here too, and we have a lot of experience here. Clark looked at the New York City that has not changed much, and said to the stunned Siri, John and I have caused a lot of trouble here, and in the end it was the Godfather who helped us solve it. Clark remembered the last time Azu's temperament changed drastically and he tried to use sandbags to fight against the Godfather. I think this world is more like a world where the Justice League has gone astray. Clark told Siri his thoughts: Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, Green Lantern, Aquaman, Flash. It seems that the corresponding superheroes can be found in the Super 7. Siri nodded. This is more like an entertainment world. Superheroes like the Super 7 are like political stars, business stars, and sports stars in real life. Siri has learned about all aspects of modern society in Peter's world. We have to speed up. I have an appointment with Starlight from the Black Robe picket team to rush over as soon as possible. After Siri finished speaking, he took Clark's hand and rushed to the destination. Although Clark can't fly, it should be no problem to resist the Homelander in this world. At the same time, in an abandoned factory building in Brooklyn, New York, the Homelander in Black Robe looked at Starlight, who was knocked to the ground by him, and shook his head in disappointment. You don't know what you missed and who you provoked, Starlight. If you get involved with the Butchers, you won't have a good ending. Look, this is your end. He looked at Butcher, who was beaten to the ground and gasping for breath. Do you think you can escape from me? No, that's a big misunderstanding. As long as I want, my eyes can always find you. He pointed at himself. I am the most powerful superhero in the world. I can do whatever I want. Butcher wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said to him with a sneer, you are just a villain who makes the world worse, never a hero. You are blinded by hatred, Butcher. Think about it, if I don't save people, who will? Without me, the world will burn to ashes, really fall into blood and fire, Homelander said seriously and solemnly. Now, tell me, where is Siri? He didn't want to talk nonsense with these people now, he just wanted to find out where Siri was. Starlight, who fell to the ground, endured the pain of the wounds left on his body during the battle just now, and said to Homelander, you will never know where Siri is. Being mocked by Starlight in person, Homelander's face instantly became gloomy. Well, it seems that you should be punished a little, Starlight. Don't think that I will go easy on you just because you know your father. Homelander's eyes turned red instantly, and it seemed that hot rays would shoot out of his eyes in the next second. On the other side, the wolf girl Kimiko, Breast Milk and Frankie, the three members of the Black Robe team who were hiding in the dark, were secretly anxious. Seeing that Homelander was about to attack Starlight, Kimiko couldn't help but stand up to stop him. Although this member of the Black Robe team can't speak, she can be regarded as a low-profile female version of Wolverine. Although she only has the self-healing ability of Wolverine, she doesn't have the pair of alloy claws. Seeing that Kimiko was about to rush out, Frankie grabbed her. Calm down, Frankie made a gesture to Kimiko not to be impulsive. Just as the two were arguing, something unexpected happened at the scene. With a whoosh, a figure appeared behind the black-robed Homelander. Hey, Homelander, Clark called Homelander from behind. Hearing a familiar voice, Homelander turned his head in astonishment and saw Clark standing in front of him. Clark Kent, Homelander looked at him in surprise. Why are you here? I brought him here. Siri walked in from outside. Didn't you say that Clark kidnapped Peter? I think you can discuss this issue. Siri mocked him with what Homelander said in the interview. Clark, are you going to stop me? Homelander looked around, puffed up his cheeks and exhaled deeply. I just want to see my father. "You're crossing the line, Homelander." Clark frowned and said to Homelander. "Crossing the line? Are you saying I used violence?" Homelander shrugged his shoulders. "It was unavoidable, you know. I'm actually a historian, Clark. Our country was born out of a violent uprising. The reason the king's face doesn't appear on our banknotes is because there are heroes like George Washington, who said that the tree of liberty must be watered with the blood of patriots and tyrants." Homelander actually quoted a famous quote from Thomas Jefferson. "What I mean is, if the only tool you leave for patriots is violence, then you shouldn't be surprised when they use violence." Starlight, he found that Homelander was becoming more and more shameless, and he even used the words he had spoken to the public before to fool Clark. Clark shook his head at Homelander and said, "In that case, I can also use violence against you, John. I'm going to deal with you for the Godfather. This is the task the Godfather gave me." Angered by Clark's words, the expression on Homelander's face became cloudy. "You can try, Clark." He pinched his waist and said to Clark, "If it was my father or another me, I might have some reservations, but you, Clark, although you have the same ability as me, you can't fly. I can easily deal with you." He was sure that Clark couldn't fly. The two looked at each other and prepared to take action. Siri, Xingguang, Kimiko and others held their breath nervously, watching the two superhumans. Homelander launched an attack instantly, and the air exploded with a bang, like a flash of lightning across the sky, rushing straight towards Clark. Clark was not to be outdone, and his eyes shot at a hot line of sight, and a powerful energy wave hit him head-on. Homelander quickly dodged sideways. While Homelander was dodging, Clark quickly approached and punched at the same time. With a bang explosion, the air was shaken apart and fled in all directions. The fists of the two collided with each other, erupting with a deafening roar. Clark was hit back heavily by the rebound force. After adjusting his body shape in the air, Homelander suddenly accelerated forward, took advantage of Clark's weakness that he couldn't react to, grabbed his clothes, and threw Clark to the abandoned factory with a sudden force. Bang! Clark broke through the wall of the factory, and with a loud bang, smoke instantly filled the place where Clark fell. After knocking Clark into the building, Homelander, who was standing in the air, showed a smug smile on his face. "Clark, you can't fly. How can you be my opponent?" Now Homelander even had the confidence to fight another self in his heart. "I am the most powerful superhero." As soon as Homelander finished speaking, he heard a voice from behind. "I don't think so." As soon as Clark finished speaking, his fist hit Homelander's back and slammed him to the ground. With a bang, Homelander was knocked to the ground and rolled along the ground. Enduring the pain in his back, he raised his head in shock and looked at Clark hanging in the air with disbelief. "Clark can actually fly." You can fly?" Homelander asked Clark in shock. Clark stood on the air, looking down at the Homelanders on the ground. "No, I can't," Clark whispered. "Clark has learned to fly, but he can't fly on weekdays. These two things are not contradictory. Clark, who has mastered the ability to fly, doesn't want to become Superman now, doesn't want to leave Smallville, doesn't want to leave his godfather and parents, so between becoming Superman and the farm, he finally chose the latter. As long as he hasn't mastered the ability to fly, he is not a real hero Superman. He found that he had a powerful idealistic ability. As long as he kept subconsciously suggesting that he couldn't fly, he would gradually forget the ability to fly. But as long as he was determined to obtain this power, he would recover it. Chapter 629 Clark smashes Azu's dream of being a Superman with one punch. Clark took this as the power of faith. He believed that if he could fly, he could regain the ability to fly. He once secretly ran to Metropolis without Peter and Zoo's knowledge. Without using the power of red kryptonite or the time acceleration function of the time gem, Clark successfully used Zoo's previous skills in learning to fly on himself, and soon mastered the ability to fly. He can fly freely in the city, or fly to the Fortress of Solitude in the Arctic in an instant to talk to the AI of whose biological father Jor-El inside. However, he did not tell Peter that he could fly. The reason is that he felt that if he could fly, he would become a real Superman. If the price of becoming a Superman is to leave Smallville and the farm, he hopes that he will never be able to fly. So Clark subconsciously sealed this matter. What he wants to do is to stay on the farm until he finishes college. Always accompany his aging parents and the godfather who seems to be forever young. Standing in the air, Clark took a deep breath, recalling the memories of his past with the godfather. His hometown Krypton and his people had long been destroyed in wars and planetary explosions. He grew up among ordinary people. In order not to cause panic among the people in the town, his parents deliberately made him mediocre, precisely mediocre. For example, he got C in every subject. He was treated like a freak by other children and endured their ridicule. His mother Martha gave him love, his father Jonathan gave him courage and patience. The two taught him to forgive, and his godfather taught him to bravely accept his differences. Originally lonely and somewhat out of place, it was because of the appearance of the godfather that he began to live like a normal person. So he has been trying to postpone the time when he becomes Superman. Now facing Homelander, Clark has to pick up his strength again. The isotope of Azu in front of him is not a small character. If he doesn't fight with a serious attitude, he may really turn over. No, you are just a guy who knows nothing but has power. Clark, even if you can fly, you can't beat me. Homelander slowly stood up from the ground and said to Clark in the sky with gritted teeth, I am the most powerful superhero in the world. I can do whatever I want. You can't stop me. After speaking harshly to Clark, Homelander slightly bent his legs and flew into the sky with a boom. Kimiko, Starlight and others saw Homelander's complete outburst of anger, and raised their heads nervously to look at the two people fighting. Frankie and Breast Milk took the opportunity to rush out and helped Starlight and Butcher on the ground. Homelander, who was full of momentum and gathered all his strength, rushed towards Clark like a flash of lightning. Facing the attack of Homelander who turned into lightning, Clark did not dodge. After dynamic vision easily captured Homelander's figure, Clark swung forward with a punch. The punch that gathered all his strength accurately hit Homelander's chest. With a bang sound of air explosion, Homelander, who was hit in the chest by Clark, was struck by lightning. An indescribable pain surrounded him, and then he could not control his body and fell directly from the air. With a loud bang, Homelander, who fell to the ground and shook violently, covered his chest and groaned. Surrounded by the pain that penetrated deep into his bones, he tried desperately to stand up, but found that all the strength in his body was drained. With bloodshot eyes, he looked at Clark in the sky with horror. He didn't expect that the other party could make him lose his fighting power with just one punch. Is this guy still the farm boy in his impression? Homelander fell into great shock and disbelief. He had dreamed of Patrick Farm and knew about Clark's existence. He originally thought that the other party was just an alien from outer space, but he didn't expect that this alien would have such a powerful punch when he burst out with all his strength. On the other side, Sari saw Clark solve Homelander with one punch, and an incredible expression appeared on his face. Is this still the Clark Kent he knew? Even Azu wouldn't have this kind of power, right? Siri was in shock, and the people in the black robe picket next to him also had a dull expression on their faces. One punch knocked down the invincible Homelander. Could this guy named Clark also be a superhero born in Compound 5? No, he's not. Starlight quickly denied this idea. Clark is not a superhero in this world. Starlight only knew that Clark was Peter's godson, and didn't expect this guy to be so powerful. Seeing the arrogant Homelander being knocked down by a punch and lying on the ground unable to stand up, Starlight felt a sense of sadness in his heart. As Homelander's opponent, Starlight knew how powerful this guy was. Homelander can survive without oxygen, he can resist cosmic radiation and survive in severe cold. In terms of speed, Homelander can fly at high altitudes in front of F-16 fighter jets. The maximum speed of the F-16 fighter jet is only less than 2,400 km per hour, and it is said that Homelander broke the speed of the sound barrier when he was a child. He can even dodge bullets and even knock down the gunmen before they shoot. Homelander could throw a baseball from New York to Boston. He also threw a soccer ball into a small plane with such force that the plane had to make an emergency landing. But these seemed to have little effect in front of Clark. No matter how powerful a superhero is, he would be so vulnerable in front of a godlike existence. Starlight had already regarded Clark as an alien godlike existence. Clark was already like this, so I wonder how powerful Mr. Patrick, his godfather, would be once he got serious. Starlight had already associated Clark with Peter. On the other side, the injured Butcher, who was supported by Frankie, also looked at Clark with an incredible face. What kind of monster is this guy? Butcher asked Frankie, Mother's Milk, and Huey. The few people looked at each other and saw the disbelief in each other's eyes. Clark slowly fell from the air, looked at Homelander who was lying on the ground and couldn't stand up, shook his head and said, "It seems that you are not as strong as you say, Homelander." Coughing, Homelander wanted to speak, but found that it became a little difficult for him to speak. After a long while, he squeezed out a sentence from his throat. Who are you? Are you really Clark Kent? I'm just an ordinary person in Smallville, an ordinary cowboy on Patrick's farm. Clark said to the other party, you should understand that no matter how powerful you are, you can't surpass everyone. You can't even beat an ordinary person like me. Homelander, how dare you say that you are an ordinary person? If you, an alien monster, are an ordinary person, then what am I? He felt that if he could stand up now, he would definitely slap this guy. Who do you think you are? Clark Kent, are you a saint? Although he was shocked by Clark's powerful strength, Homelander refused to give in. You are just a poor guy who has great power but doesn't know how to use it. You hold a nuclear bomb in your hand, but you don't know how to deter others, how to use it, and how to maximize the power of the nuclear bomb. I tell you, I am Homelander. I am the most loved superhero by everyone in this world. Really? But don't you always want to get the recognition of the Godfather? The recognition of everyone in this world, the recognition of the Godfather. Which of the two do you think is more important? Homelander was immediately controlled by Clark's words and fell into silence. He did want to get Peter's recognition, even though he had never lived with Peter. The purpose of doing these things now is nothing more than using Siri to travel to the DC world, or to connect the two worlds. Because Zoo and his dreams are interconnected and entangled with each other, he can peek into Zoo's life and has always been jealous of Zoo. He has always wanted to let Peter know through what he has done that he is the most noteworthy Homelander. No, he only loves himself. Without waiting for Homelander to speak, the Butcher walked over with his head tilted. He glanced at Homelander who was lying on the ground, and said to Clark with an unhappy expression, this guy is arrogant, conceited, narcissistic, inferior, cowardly, pitiful, eager for attention, eager for family affection, afraid of loneliness, always a great and glorious patriot in front of the camera, but behind the camera is a domineering dictator. He can do whatever he wants, but he dare not go too far. He is just a kitten who suddenly got superpowers. What a kitten wants most is to be recognized by his owner. The Butcher's mouth was tilted, revealing a wicked smile, so he will long for the people to love him, and long for the love of his so-called father. The Butcher, with a sarcastic smile on his face, said to Homelander, little cat, it's a pity. Your father will not save you. Your only ending is to face death. As he said that, the Butcher was ready to shoot out the tentacles in his body to kill the Homelander in front of him, whom he had always hated and cheated on him. Seeing that the Butcher wanted to kill Homelander, Clark immediately prepared to stop him. The mission given to him by the Godfather did not include killing Homelander. Clark was about to stop the Butcher's action, but a familiar voice suddenly sounded behind him. It seems that I am not too late. Hearing Peter's voice, Sari immediately turned around and looked at Peter who appeared behind everyone in surprise. Xingguang was stunned when he saw Peter, who had not been seen for a long time but whose appearance had not changed much. Chapter 630 I banish you to the Demon Hunter continent. Peter looked at the stunned Starlight. After just a short time, Starlight's chubby round face had changed significantly. The round face became thinner, the jawline was obvious, and the cheekbones were more prominent. Peter wondered if she had plastic surgery. Or was it just that as she got older, the baby fat and facial fat disappeared? The moment Peter observed Starlight's face, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. Although he wanted to ask her if she had plastic surgery and if she needed his help, in order to maintain his mature personality, he finally threw this question out of his mind. Teacher, Sari walked towards him happily after seeing Peter appear. Clark defeated Homelander. Sari told Peter what happened at the scene. I know, Peter appeared at the scene when Clark and Black Robazu started fighting. But he didn't show up until the battle between the two was over. What surprised him was that Clark actually learned to fly, and he could kill Homelander in seconds with his full strength. Isn't Clark, who has mastered the ability to fly, evolving towards a complete Superman? What shocked him even more was that this kid actually hid it from him. Clark, when did you learn to fly? Peter asked Clark with a serious expression. Clark had already thought of a reason. Sorry, Godfather, I should have told you earlier. I mastered the ability to fly half a year ago, but I couldn't master it skillfully. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, so I didn't tell you. Well, have you learned it now? Clark showed an unnatural expression on his face. No, Godfather, I just used it suddenly just now. I'm afraid it won't work now. While talking to Peter, Clark comforted himself mentally. This is not lying to the Godfather. He really doesn't want to fly now. He really forgot the ability to fly. Peter, You really have an adaptive superpower. It comes when you want to, and it's thrown away when you don't want to. Although he wanted to continue asking Clark about his flying superpower, he could roughly guess Clark's thoughts, so he didn't continue to ask. Clark might be worried about the responsibility of family and superheroes. Even if he enlightened him about this kind of problem, it would probably have little effect. The most important thing is that Clark needs to understand how to deal with the proportion of these two in his life. After saying a few words to Siri and Clark, Peter walked towards Butcher and Homelander, who fell to the ground. Seeing Peter appear, Butcher frowned. He just said that Homelander's father would not come to save him, but he didn't expect that the other party would come around. He knew that Peter was not a simple person. Having a perverted child like Clark means that Peter Patrick is not a normal person. Seeing Peter walking towards him, Butcher narrowed his eyes, clenched his fists nervously, and prepared to take action if anything went wrong. Unexpectedly, Peter ignored him and walked directly to Homelander on the ground. Homelander, who was originally arrogant, was a little wilted when he saw Peter coming. He raised his head and looked at Peter, who was looking down at him. He opened his lips and shouted to him, "Dad." Peter did not deny the fact that Homelander recognized him as his father. He shook his head and said to Homelander, who had become much more honest, "I heard from Siri that you have been very reckless recently, and you are arrogant and think that you are a superhero in this world. And you have the power to decide the life and death of ordinary people, right?" "John, no, of course not, Dad, that's just slander from those guys. There are some misunderstandings between Siri and me, and she may have misunderstood me." Homelander immediately showed an innocent expression on his face. "In fact, I have been trying to make the world a better place. I was even on Time magazine some time ago." Seeing Homelander pretending to be a good person, and acting exactly the same as he did in front of the media, Starlight was a little speechless. This guy really knows how to change his face. He has one expression in front of people like him, and another expression in front of his father. In fact, it is very likely that Starlight did it. Soon Homelander pushed the blame on Starlight. Starlight has 100 million fans. She incited people's hatred of superheroes on Twitter, making people full of hatred and discrimination against superheroes, and there are also unfounded legal charges. "Dad, regarding the misunderstanding between me and Siri, I just hope that she can take me into the portal to see you, that's all. But Miss Siri is mixed with the people of the Black Robe Picket team, and she has been completely influenced by them." Starlight and Siri listened to Homelander's report and fell into silence. Homelander used to pretend to be a hero to please the masses, and now he pretends to be a good person to get Peter admitted. This guy really lacks love. Really, looking at the nonsense Homelander in black robe, Peter felt a little headache. This guy is really tricky. Although Peter didn't want to care about the affairs of this world, Siri came to him for help. In addition, Azu in black robe has always called him Dad. It would be a bit unreasonable to ignore this cheap son. But how to punish or educate Homelander really gave him a headache. Shaking his head, Peter calmed himself down and asked him, "John, do you think you are a superhero and superior to others? Or, do you think you are the god of this world?" "Right, no, I certainly don't think so." Homelander immediately denied it and said that he had never said such a thing. But Peter knew that he must have thought so by looking at his expression. "Since you think you are a god who dominates ordinary people, smarter than anyone else, stronger than anyone else, and born extraordinary, then I will let you experience the life of an ordinary person." Peter decided to temper this giant baby. Before, he asked Clark to rush to the Black Robe world first, and he took advantage of this time to go to Asgard in the Marvel world and found the goddess Frigga. Odin has passed away, Frigga and Thor control Asgard, and Peter borrowed a magic weapon from them, a magic bracelet that suppresses power. The magic bracelet cast by the dwarves is said to be able to imprison most of the user's power and suppress the user's violent and impulsive emotions. Thor had used this thing on the dead Marvel Loki before, but it seemed to have little effect, so it was put aside. Peter went to Asgard and took the bracelet to use it on the black-robed Homelander. "Now, John, I'm going to take away your power." Peter looked at the Homelander who was lying on the ground and stretched out his hand to him. With a bang, the Stars and Stripes cloak of the Homelander who was lying on the ground was taken off and flew into his hands. At the same time, the silver bracelet was taken out and put into the hands of the stunned Homelander. At the same time, Peter recited a spell that Queen Frigga taught him to make the magic bracelet effective. Homelander, who no longer had any power, felt a sudden heaviness in his body, and weakness and powerlessness attacked his body. It seemed that the superpowers given to him by compound number 5 left him in an instant. Hearing Peter say that he would deprive himself of his power, the weak Homelander panicked immediately, and he knew that Peter was capable of doing such a thing. "No. Dad, you can't do that," Homelander shouted at Peter in despair. At this time, Xingguang, Kimiko, Butcher, Frankie and Breast Milk were all stunned in place, looking at the Homelander who was lying on the ground and roaring unwillingly with unbelievable eyes. Peter ignored his shouting, but said to Siri, "Siri, open the portal to the Demon Hunter continent." He planned to send the black-robed Homelander who had lost his power to the Demon Hunter continent for some training. Although the Demon Hunter continent is full of crises, Azu, who is wearing a magic bracelet, should not encounter too much trouble. The magic bracelet also has magical power, which can not only protect the host, but also give the host's body functions to always maintain the peak state. In addition, the Demon Hunter continent is Siri's home court, and the two can help each other. In other words, Homelander is also a helper found by Peter for Siri. Maybe after Homelander comes back, he can correct his giant baby mentality. The desperate Homelander looked at Peter with unwilling eyes. Peter held the Stars and Stripes cloak of Homelander and said, "Whoever wears this cloak, as long as he has a heart of kindness and responsibility, will have the power of Homelander. And you, John, can only wear this cloak when you understand again why your power is used. Within a year, if you can put on this cloak again, I will recognize you." As he said that, he threw the Stars and Stripes into the passage of the portal. Homelander in black robe could only watch the portal take away the cloak. No. 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 Then, with his unwilling roar, the portal also teleported Homelander who had lost his power out. Seeing Peter's somewhat familiar behavior, Clark was a little confused. "Godfather, are you addicted to this? Will I be sent away next time if I make a mistake?" Peter quietly watched the portal close and turned around. What he said just now, "Whoever wears this cloak, as long as he has a heart of kindness and responsibility, will have the power of Homelander." He couldn't do this to Hela, and of course he couldn't do it to Homelander. He used the magic bracelet to seal the power of Homelander, but he could not give his power to others. Starlight and others beside him looked at Peter throwing down his cloak and banishing Homelander, and the expressions on their faces were very interesting. "What is this? Homelander just disappeared like that? And you said you were an ordinary person, but your behavior of banishing Homelander is not like an ordinary person at all." Chapter 631, Legend Clark's Wish. "Godfather," Clark came over timidly and asked him, "Is it really okay? Is it really okay to send the Homelanders to Siri's world?" He actually wanted to ask if he made a mistake in the future, and the Godfather would deprive him of his power and send him to a strange world. He knew that the Demon Hunter world was not a simple world. He had heard Siri say before that all the legendary stories of this continent began with a disaster 1,500 years ago. The worlds between different dimensions collided, and the two worlds were directly connected and penetrated each other. It trapped many creatures from various different worlds in this world, such as ghouls, bloodthorn corpse demons and high-level vampires, which were the remnants left by the intersection of the celestial spheres. These creatures have their own unique ecology and are relics of the past era. Hundreds of years later, the Northerners began to settle on the continent, a process called the First Landing. In addition, during the intersection of the worlds, some energy was also left on the continent, which is the magic of the Demon Hunter world. Only a few people can use this supernatural power. Such a dangerous and wild world, full of wonder and magic, Clark suspected that he might be tricked if he entered this world. Now the Homelander of the Black Robe world has been sent to the Demon Hunter continent, and Clark mourned for him for a few seconds. Siri also reacted and walked over with a complicated expression. "Teacher, thank you." She knew that Peter did this to find a helper for her when she was walking in the Demon Hunter continent. "No, you don't have to thank me, Siri." Peter reached out and touched Siri's hair, and said to her, "Your journey is full of various dangers. I can't always accompany you, but no matter what difficulties you encounter, you can come back to me." "Well, I will, thank you, Peter." Siri walked over and gently hugged Peter. When the two father and daughter were enjoying the warm time of reunion, Starlight walked over to him. "Thank you for your help, Mr. Padrick." Starlight thanked Peter with a complicated expression. Peter's operation just now made him full of awe for Peter. "Thank you for helping us defeat the Homelander." Starlight thanked Peter sincerely. If it weren't for Peter and Clark's actions, I'm afraid the entire Black Robe team would have been wiped out. You're welcome, Starlight. Peter shook his head and said to her, you have a year to complete your plan to deal with superhumans. I hope you can make good progress. Will Homelander return after a year? Starlight asked in shock. Who knows about this kind of thing? Maybe he can regain the recognition of the cloak within a year. Peter shrugged his shoulders and said so. Although he said so, Peter had already made a decision in his heart. After a year, he will bring Homelander back to the Black Robe world, regardless of whether the other party corrects his giant baby personality. After all, this guy calls himself dad. As a cheap dad, it's not good for him to abuse this son too much. On the other side, Butcher's eyes have been on Peter. He didn't expect that this guy could actually exile Homelander to another world. People who can do this can no longer be described as human, right? Butcher guessed Peter's identity in his heart. But he soon thought of something more important. Homelander was exiled, and Ryan had no one to take care of him. He immediately had the idea of taking Ryan back to take care of him. Padwick Farm. Zoo and Star-Lord, who had already returned from the cinema, Boom and V stared blankly at Peter and Clark. After learning that Peter had exiled Homelander to the Demon Hunter world, Zoo opened his mouth wide. You mean, Dad, you let the other me become a Demon Hunter? Zoo asked him in shock. Well, this is also a kind of training for his giant baby mentality, Peter said silently in his heart. After all, this kid calls me dad and finds me a grandson. Of course, I have the responsibility to correct the other party's various problems. But, Star-Lord said worriedly, Dad, you said this is a training, aren't you worried that he will be eaten by evil ghosts? Although his ability is suppressed, I think you will have no problem dealing with a few evil ghosts, Peter said to Star-Lord. Besides, being able to appreciate the scenery of another world for free, such a good thing doesn't happen every day. Star-Lord, he originally wanted to say that he was not interested in such free travel at all. But when he thought of the risk of being exiled, he wisely shut up. Then wish him good luck. Azu didn't feel anything wrong about another self being exiled to the Demon Hunter world. Anyway, he didn't have a good impression of another arrogant and sensitive person who lacked love and always envied his countrymen. But, Clark, how did you beat the other me? Azu asked Clark his biggest doubt. I don't know, maybe I was lucky enough. Clark looked at Peter and decided not to tell what happened on the scene. He was worried that once he told it, Azu would pester him to ask about flying. If Azu knew that he could fly, if he wanted to compete with him, should he give in to him? But if he gave in to Azu, would he feel more insulted? So once he said that he learned to fly, it would probably cause a lot of trouble. What Clark was worried about did not happen in the end. Peter did not refute his words, nor did he tell Azu that he could fly. Seeing that Clark was unwilling to say more, Azu did not continue to ask. He looked at Peter and asked, Dad, do you think another Homelander can really change his giant baby mentality? That's not important. Peter shook his head and said, it's just a test for him. Peter didn't care much about whether Homelander's giant baby mentality was corrected. After all, what's important is the process, not the result. Late at night, after Peter covered Bayo and Wei with a quilt, he was about to leave. But Wei's voice stopped him. Dad, can you tell me how Brother Clark defeated Homelander? Wei blinked and asked him. Of course. Peter walked to Wei's bed, sat beside her, and told her about the scene of Clark and Homelander fighting. Bayo next to him also listened with relish. Dad, what is a superhero? Bayo suddenly asked Peter such a question. Superhero? Peter was stunned for a moment and organized his words. Superheroes are fairy tales for adults. They wear strange armor or uniforms, and run, fight and sacrifice for the harm of mankind and social injustice. Superheroes are immortal. No matter how many times they die in comics or movies to save mankind and fight against evil forces, they will always come back with various explanations, continue to be loved by people, and continue their legend. If he really leaves, their deeds and their spirit will continue to affect us. When we walk on the street, encounter difficulties, or when social events occur, the words we have seen and heard will suddenly appear in our minds. Peter stroked Wei's hair with his hand and said softly, not only superheroes, but any character worth remembering will be like this, and the passion and feelings that superheroes bring us will always make us happy. Each of us can project ourselves into them, whether it is our ideal or real self, at the same time. Clark just walked to the corridor outside the room of Bayo and Wei. He accidentally heard the Godfather's voice and stopped unconsciously. Is Clark a superhero? Wei asked Peter in a low voice. Clark outside the door also pricked up his ears. Of course, Clark is your role model, and the black-robed Homelander's your negative role model, Peter said to the two. Clark is willing to be an ordinary person, while Homelander refuses to be an ordinary person. If you have great power, but dare to be ordinary, this is a legend. Peter gently touched Wei's face with his hand. When a person knows that his life is in danger, but still stands up, this is a legend. When a person has outstanding merits, but does not think of his noble status, and still aims at a better tomorrow for mankind, this is a legend. When a person has the ability or opportunity to do evil, he can keep his conscience and withstand temptation, this is a legend. When a person no longer only cares about himself, knows how to take care of others and help the weak, this is a legend. When a person can withstand all kinds of pressure and do the right thing, it is a legend, and what Dad hopes you will become is such a legend. After listening to Peter's words, Bomb and Wei looked at each other. Boom first said to Peter, Dad, I will be your legend. Wei's head emerged from the quilt. Me too, Dad, I will be your legend. Make you proud of me. I will be the greatest person in the whole Smallville, and let everyone look up to our Patrick family. Peter listened to his daughter's confession and rubbed their faces in a good mood. Dad believes you will become legends. After saying good night to his two daughters, Peter left the room and entered the corridor to see Clark outside. I was just passing by, Godfather, Clark said a little flustered. I know, you just happened to pass by and accidentally overheard, Clark. Peter pretended to understand very well. No, Godfather, Clark hesitated for a while before mustering up the courage to say to him, Godfather, I want to ask you something. What? Godfather, do you think I can protect the farm for you? Chapter 632, The Strange Farm, Azu's harsh words. To you, Clark, which one is more important to you, Patrick's farm or Superman? Peter asked Clark. If you asked me before, I might say that they are both equally important, but Godfather, you know my true thoughts. I have always been willing to be an ordinary person, an ordinary cowboy living on a farm in Kansas. Clark hesitated for a moment, and finally confessed his true thoughts. Even if you have the power to easily defeat the Homelander in the black robe world, Clark, are you still willing to be an ordinary person? Yes, Godfather, because I have never thought of using the power to gain anything for myself. Like Azu from another world, even if he becomes the most powerful superhero in that world, what's the use? He is not happy at all. Clark raised his head and looked directly into Peter's eyes. For me, as long as I live with everyone on the farm, that's enough. I hope to protect the farm, protect you, Godfather, and protect you with my power. Peter listened to Clark's words and nodded slowly. If you have such a firm belief, then carry it out. Peter put his hand on Clark's shoulder and patted him. I will keep the fact that you have learned to fly a secret. If you want to spend 4 years of college life as Clark Patrick Kent, I will always support you. As for the so-called Superman's responsibilities, you don't need to take on anything. After all, you never owe the world anything, since Clark is unwilling to be Superman now and wants to protect the farm for himself. Let him be a happy cowboy now. He remembered that among the countless Superman in parallel worlds, there was a Superman who chose to give up his power and return to the farm to become an ordinary farmer. When Lex Luthor, who was holding kryptonite in the parallel world, entered the world of Superman on the farm to cause trouble, Superman took the kryptonite from him in Lex's stunned eyes. After taking the kryptonite, Clark punched Lex Luthor, making him dizzy and doubting his life. Even after giving up his power, Clark was still a strong man, and it was more than enough to deal with Lex. Now Peter found that Clark had this trend. He suspected that Clark's final fate would be to return to the farm and guard the farm for him as an ordinary person. After pondering for a while, Peter collected his thoughts and said to Clark, well, it's getting late, go back and rest. Good night, Godfather. Clark said good night to Peter and returned to the room with mixed feelings. Although he still wanted to continue talking to the Godfather about future life choices, the time was not right, so he had to talk another day. The next day, early in the morning, at breakfast, Zoo mentioned a farm on the other side of the town. Dad, I think our farm business has encountered competitors, Zoo said seriously to Peter, who was talking to Tom. After hearing this, Peter put down the fried eggs in his hand and looked at him. What competitor? Joe McNally. Dad, do you know him? He's the largest farmer in Smallville. Recently, he has been expanding the scope of the farm and recruiting people. More importantly, he is also annexing other farms. Zoo, who thinks he is the guardian of the farm, feels provoked. Although he hasn't started to buy our farm yet, I think we should take precautions." Peter listened to Azu's well-reasoned words, raised his eyebrows and asked him, "So, how do you want to take precautions?" Azu gave his idea. "Dad, maybe you can put this guy named Joe McNally into the world of demon hunters to prevent him from maliciously buying us and lowering the price of farm products." As Azu said, he saw Peter's increasingly unfriendly eyes, laughed dryly and changed his words, saying, "Okay, I'm kidding. Just liven up the atmosphere at the breakfast table." Azu said that he was just joking to liven up the atmosphere. "Well, you'd better be joking, John, otherwise I'll consider sending you to the demon hunter world to be a demon hunter with you in another world." Hearing Peter's tone that didn't seem to be joking, Azu immediately became honest. He had no interest in the world that was said to be darker than the Middle Ages. At the same time, Joe McNally's farm that Azu talked about. In the vast farm, countless hired farmers were working in the fields. "No, we can't go on like this, it will tire us to death." A teenager with Hispanic looks wiped the sweat from his head, straightened up and said to his partner who was hoeing the ground next to him, "Francisco, we have to leave here." Francisco, who was also Spanish, glanced at the farm exit in the distance and shook his head and said, "We can't escape from here. It will be terrible if he finds out that we are lazy. Get to work." Javier, who looked to be about 14 or 15 years old, stood up straight and said dissatisfiedly, "So what if he saw me being lazy? I didn't come to the United States to be a slave. I came to find my mother, and besides, this guy doesn't pay us at all." With sweat and dirt on his face, he gritted his teeth and said to his partner, "We must escape from here." His companion Francisco shook his head. You can't do it. Anyone who tries to escape will eventually disappear, and their ending will not be very good." Javier took a deep breath and whispered to his companion, "Francisco, don't you understand me? When have I ever disappointed you?" he said to his companions in a serious tone. "Trust me, I will definitely take you away from here." Francisco looked at Javier's resolute expression, and finally nodded out of trust into his companions. "Okay, what are your plans for the night?" With a bang, the farmer who was working nearby fell to the ground due to exhaustion. Javier and Francisco hurried forward. "Hey, are you okay?" Hearing the noise coming from here, the person in charge of monitoring the scene came up and drove the two away. "Go. You two guys, hurry up and work. This is not something you should care about." The two had no choice but to get up and watch the fallen farmer being carried away. "Do you have any detailed plans? Once they catch us, our ending will not be very good," Francisco whispered to him again. "Just trust me." At night, in the endless cornfield, two figures kept shuttling in it. "Hurry up, Francisco." Javier, who was running in the front, pushed aside the corn and ran forward, while shouting to Francisco behind him. Francisco sped up and soon caught up. "Something is wrong, Javier, there is something is following us." Francisco, who was out of breath, grabbed Javier's clothes and said to him, "I just felt that there is something under the ground." As soon as he finished speaking, he heard a boom sound from far behind. In the horrified eyes of the two, they only saw that the corn was knocked down by an invisible force. A strange force was rushing towards the direction where the two were. "Damn it! Get out of here!" Javier showed a panic on his face, and pulled Francisco to run outside at the fastest speed. The thick fog in the night began to spread, and the vision of the two gradually became blurred. Continuously pushing aside the corn, the two ran forward quickly. The corn hit their bodies, and waves of pain came. Both of them even had blood marks on their faces. But the strange existence behind them was still chasing them relentlessly, and getting closer and closer. The corn nearby was constantly being knocked down, and the terrifying existence kept closing the distance between them and the two. The two people who ran hard gradually pulled away. Javier ran in front, and while running, he shouted to his companions behind him, "Hurry up! Francisco, hurry! That thing is catching up soon." With a bang, Javier jumped onto the gully and ran out of the cornfield. Standing on the outskirts of the cornfield, he was about to call Francisco. Unexpectedly, Francisco, who was about to escape from the cornfield, was knocked down in the cornfield before he could respond. The sounds of running and chasing stopped abruptly. The surroundings fell into silence. No, Francisco, Javier shouted to his companions. But no matter how he shouted, there was no sound in the cornfield, as if Francisco had never existed. Looking at the dark cornfield, Javier felt as if there was a beast in it that could devour him at any time. Swallowing his saliva, he took 2 steps back. Without caring about his friend's safety, he turned and ran forward. The next day, Peter took Clark, Zoo and Star-Lord and drove to the exchange market held in the town square to sell agricultural products. Although Peter is not short of money now. But as a farmer, if he doesn't even do some daily farm work, it will damage his farmer's image. In the backyard of Patrick's farm, Bao didn't go to the farm. At this time, she was practicing shooting. Bang! The bottle cap in the distance was shot away by her. Bang! 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 She pulled the trigger continuously, and a row of Coke bottle caps were all hit accurately by her. Well, compared to rune spells, I am still suitable for shooting. Bao put away her bang gun and couldn't help saying. Before, Peter asked her and Wei to learn rune magic from Siri. But she felt that no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't catch up with Siri's progress. Dad said that Siri was a magic genius, and she didn't have this talent. Sighing slightly, Bao put away the gun, and suddenly heard a sound from the barn behind her. Who? Chapter 633 I am a lunatic and I have a doctor's certificate. Come out. Boom raised his gun, frowned like Peter, and shouted at the straw in the barn. I've seen you. Hey, don't shoot. Javier, who was hiding here, stood up with his hands raised. Seeing the blue-haired lolly pointing a gun at him, he swallowed nervously. The gun in your hand is not real, right? Bang! Boom shot at the wooden pillar next to him, and debris flew everywhere. This is the real one. Taking a deep breath, Javier quickly raised his hand high. You will definitely not shoot, right? That's not necessarily the case. I'm a lunatic and I have a doctor's certificate. Boom directly threatened the guy who broke into his territory. Javier didn't know that Boom was trying to scare him. Hearing that the other party seemed to be mentally unstable, his inner fear became even worse. Boom, just when Javier didn't know what to do, a voice appeared to save him. Wei walked into the barn and saw the stranger being pointed at by Boom's gun. What happened? Bao? I don't know. I just saw this guy sneaking here. He must be plotting something bad against our farm. No, I'm not. I escaped here. Please, don't shoot. Javier begged for mercy. Bao, put down the gun. I don't think he's a bad guy. Wei asked Bao to put down the gun. Okay, Wei, you are always willing to believe others. Dad said that blind trust will hurt yourself. After complaining to Wei, Bao finally put away the gun. Looking at the wounds and dirt on the other person's body, Wei said to the other person, come with me. Persephone was in the living room. Wei asked the other person to follow her to the living room for treatment. In the living room, Persephone applied medicine to the other person, and Bao and Wei stood beside her. You speak English well, Persephone said to the other person. Thank you, I often watch American TV shows and learn your vocabulary. Javier stammered to thank Persephone, whose temperament made him a little afraid to look directly at her. What's your name? Persephone asked. Javier. Persephone nodded and continued, so, Javier, can you tell me what happened? Why are you here? And you have wounds all over your body. After hesitating for a while, Javier said to Persephone, can you not call the police? Persephone was stunned for a moment. Why should I call the police? Because I came from the farm on the other side of the road. Persephone thought for a while. You mean Joe McNally's farm? Yes, if I don't escape from there, I will never see my mother again. Wei next to him interrupted and said, you described it like a prison. In fact, it's a prison. Don't think about getting out once you go in, and you won't have enough food, Javier said with lingering fear. I originally escaped with my friend Francisco, but we ran a short distance and encountered something weird. Bao's curiosity was also aroused. What weird thing? I don't know. I only know that it wasn't a beast or a machine, but something more terrible than that. There was a rumbling sound from the ground, and a huge sound chased us. Then Francisco disappeared. Listening to Javier's story, Persephone frowned and said to him, listen, I'm sorry, but I'm afraid I have to call the sheriff. At this time, Persephone had already thrown aside her former identity as the queen of the underworld and gradually regarded herself as the mistress of the farm. After hearing this kind of thing, the first thing that came to her mind was to call the police instead of investigating what the strange existence was. No, stop fighting. Please, Javier pleaded with Persephone. I'm an illegal immigrant. They will send me away. You are an illegal immigrant? Yes, Javier showed an uneasy expression on his face. I came from Mexico. Last week, someone hid a group of 15 of us in the back of a truck and sneaked across the border. I came here to find my mother. But I became a laborer there. Wei listened to what the other party said and asked, "Where's your mother?" "She works in a dry cleaning shop in Granville. After my father died, she immigrated to the United States. She saved money for 2 years just to bring me here." Hearing this, Persephone looked at the other party's sad expression and comforted him. "Your mother must miss you very much?" "Yes." Javier lowered his head uncomfortably and took out the amulet from his neck. "This is the amulet my mother gave me. If I had known earlier, I would have given it to Francisco. We are inseparable, just like brothers." Persephone turned her eyes away from the other's amulet and comforted him. "Don't worry, you will always find your friends." At the same time, Peter drove a pickup truck, carrying crops to the center of Smallville Square. Star-Lord sat in the co-pilot, and Azu and Clark sat in the back seat. "Dad, what do you think will happen to the people of the homeland in the Demon Hunter world and the Black Robe world?" Star-Lord looked at the scene flashing outside and turned to ask Peter. "Corruption demons, water ghosts, tomb banshees, demon ghosts, spike demons, these monsters are all possible." Star-Lord asked curiously, "Why do you know all this?" "Dad, have you been to the Demon Hunter world?" "Of course, I have traveled in that continent," Peter said to himself in his heart. "Your father had cut from the 100 Fruit Garden to navigate in the game world of The Witcher, Wild Hunt in his previous life. Everyone on the continent has been defeated by your father's Gwent card. Ciri has been saved by me no less than 5 times, and the Yihun in the city has been visited by me no less than 90 times. Dad, can you tell us about your adventures in the Demon Hunter world?" Star-Lord showed great interest in Peter's adventures. Azu and Clark, who were sitting in the back seat, also pricked up their ears. Of course, Peter organized his words and said to the few people, "Do you know why the farmers in the Demon Hunter continent don't work during the day?" Star-Lord thought for a while. "Are they afraid of the sun?" "That's only one aspect." Peter stepped on the brakes at the traffic light intersection and slowly said to the few people, "The farmers stop working at noon not to avoid the sun, but to avoid the daytime spirits." "Daytime spirits?" "Yes, on particularly hot summer days, when the sun reaches its highest point, sometimes there will be spirits that look like women wearing white robes and sunburnt. These are daytime spirits. They are transformed from young women who died violently. They are mad with pain or anger, wandering in the farmland, looking for their unfaithful lovers or secretly assassinated rivals. Anyone who does not hide in time will be killed by them. They are often imprisoned in the world by certain objects with strong emotional significance, so if you find a wedding ring or a torn veil in the farmland, you must not pick it up, but run away quickly." Peter said slowly to Star-Lord, "Daytime spirits only appear in the countryside, and usually stay near the place where they died. They hunt farmers working in the fields, or children playing nearby. They can create multiple images that are exactly the same as themselves, and let the images surround the victim, like a dance. Such a spirit ritual will absorb the victim's vitality and make the spirit's own power stronger." "Then how do we deal with daytime spirits?" Clark, who was sitting in the back seat, asked worriedly. "Godfather, how did you deal with daytime spirits after you encountered them?" Peter stepped on the accelerator and said to Clark, "Daytime spirits can also manipulate a material world to a limited extent, such as raising dust to temporarily blind and confuse opponents. They can also become invisible, and then they will be difficult to hurt. I once encountered such a monster by a whale. As for how to deal with them, I waited for them to reveal their true colors and then attacked them with a silver sword." Clark sat in the back seat and used a sketchbook to draw the monsters described by Peter. After finishing the drawing, he cast his eyes to the ground outside that was basking in the sun and emitting heat. Fortunately, farmers in this world will not encounter daytime spirits when working. Instead, they can make scarecrows out of these daytime spirits to drive away sparrows. After driving to the market, Azu and Clark helped to move the agricultural products down. Just as they were setting up the products for sale, Peter saw a familiar figure walking towards him. Bald Lex Luthor came over and greeted him. "Mr. Padrick, great, I didn't expect to see you here." Lex stepped forward and shook hands with Peter. "I was planning to visit you in the next 2 days." "No, Lex, I should thank you. If it weren't for your help last time, the reconstruction of Gotham would not have been so smooth." Because of the reconstruction of Gotham last time, Peter thanked the other party. Although this kid may have impure motives, he helped him after all, and he owed him a favor. "This is what I should do. After all, I am also a part of America, and I don't want to see the people of a city living in a painful hell," Lex said with a smile on his face. Watching the conversation between Peter and Lex, Clark next to him sighed softly. The Godfather would definitely find an excuse to sell the farm products to the three of them because of Lex. As Clark had guessed, Peter accepted Lex's invitation and left the stall to go to the cafe. The Godfather, who was good at slacking off, left the farm products to the three of them. In the afternoon, since Peter hadn't come back yet, Clark had to drive the pickup back to the farm. Driving the pickup on the road, Clark soon noticed a car approaching quickly from behind. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 634 Clark reveals his ability, Azu's anger. Hey, farm boy. A sports car behind the pickup truck driven by Clark drove to the left parallel to him. Two young men and one woman in the convertible sports car taunted Clark and raised their middle fingers to him. I can smell the chicken shit on you, the yellow-haired man driving the sports car taunted Clark and stepped on the accelerator to quickly overtake. Azu, who was sitting in the passenger seat, stared at the license plate number of the sports car and frowned tightly. After noting the other party's license plate number, Azu planned to settle accounts with these guys after returning to the farm. Let these guys know what it means to say that trouble comes from the mouth. Clark did not care about the other party's taunting, but just frowned slightly. Star-Lord was in the back seat, staring at the guy in the sports car, and ruthlessly raised two middle fingers to the people in the sports car. Soon the car drove to a nearby bridge. Due to the large number of vehicles, all the cars on the bridge were blocked. The sports car that just passed by also stopped in front. Clark had just stopped the pickup truck when a truck drove past in the next lane. Due to the high speed, the truck could not stop in time. With a bang, the truck hit the sports car heavily. The three people in the sports car who had given Clark the middle finger before were not wearing seat belts, so they were directly knocked out by the huge inertia of the truck and fell directly under the bridge. Since there was a dry riverbed under the bridge, it is conceivable what the three people would encounter if they fell down. At the critical moment, Clark, who witnessed a car accident, got out of the car immediately. Clark moved forward at super speed and activated his flying ability, and flew towards the three people who fell. The three people who were hit at high speed had fainted in the air due to injuries and shock. Clark successfully caught the three people and put them on the dry riverbed under the bridge. Because this scene happened too suddenly, Azu and Star-Lord had not reacted yet, and Clark flew out. When the two recovered from their sluggish state, they saw Clark returning. How did you do it? Clark, didn't you say you can't fly? Azu asked Clark, who was flying to save people, in surprise. Did Clark say before that his flying ability was sometimes working and sometimes not? What is this now? Azu looked at the seemingly honest Clark suspiciously. He felt that Clark might have been lying to him before. It didn't look like he couldn't fly at all. I just used it suddenly. Maybe in different situations, it will burst out temporarily. Clark didn't admit that he could fly. No, you are still lying, Clark. In fact, you have learned to fly a long time ago, right? Azu immediately saw that Clark was lying. He took a deep breath and looked at him unhappily. Do you think I will be jealous of you? So you pretend that you can fly? Or do you think that you will change something after you can fly? Azu felt that Clark was really insidious and was playing tricks on him. They grew up together, and he knew Clark very well. He could easily tell whether the other party was lying or not. No, of course I don't think so. Clark looked into Azu's eyes and said, I just don't want to be Superman now. I have things to do. Since Azu already knew, Clark no longer concealed it. What are you going to do? Be an ordinary farm cowboy. Accompany my parents and godfather, and protect Patrick's farm. Hearing Clark say that he would protect his own farm, Azu immediately became angry and glared at Clark. You don't need to protect your father's farm, Clark. Do your job of saving the world. Aren't you Superman? The lives of the entire universe are waiting for you to save, and you actually want to be an ordinary person. Facing Azu's sneer, Clark said word by word, I am just an ordinary person. Azu pinched his waist, puffed up his cheeks and exhaled to calm himself down, and said coldly to him, No, you are not an ordinary person. You are a Kryptonian, Clark. You are not an Earthling. You are not your father's biological son, and you will never be qualified to inherit the farm. Azu found that he was very stable now. If I had known Clark was targeting my farm, I would have attacked Clark to let him know the consequences of having thoughts that he shouldn't have. Sure enough, I am now more and more mature and more like my father. I have always been an ordinary child from a small town farm, but one day I suddenly found that I had superpowers. With the help of the Godfather, I knew that I was an alien, Clark said to Azu with a serious expression. I was born and raised on Earth. My abilities gradually awakened. With the company of my parents, the teachings of the Godfather, and the interactions with you, Azu, I had a wonderful childhood. To some extent, I had a more perfect childhood than most people, which made me never spend time to heal my childhood. The Godfather taught me to always be optimistic, always face difficulties positively, and not be afraid of anything, to encourage and help others. This is my life experience. I have never regarded myself as an alien. I have always regarded myself as the spiritual successor of the Godfather. Clark said that the Godfather gave him a perfect childhood, and it was because of this childhood that he always regarded himself as an Earthling. I will never, ever consider myself an alien. I am just an Earthling because I have a healthy life. I have learned a lot from the Godfather. I will protect the farm and the Godfather. As a Superman, I will not protect the world, but the farm and the Godfather. Azu, he felt that Clark was declaring war on him. Very good, now he will not have any psychological burden to deal with Clark in the future. It turns out that Clark, this seemingly honest guy, is the main competitor who has been competing with him for the farm. Very good, Clark, your purpose of becoming Superman is to protect the farm. I believe that my father will be very disappointed to hear you say that, Azu sneered and said, the last hope of Krypton, the greatest hero on Earth, just wants to be a farmer. Think about your childhood dream, Clark. You said you hoped to help people, now you have abandoned your ideals at that time, you betrayed yourself. Clark shook his head and said, no, this is not a betrayal. At the beginning, I was full of fear of my own power. Although I knew that I was different, this powerful power also made me unable to control myself sometimes. I didn't want to be an outlier among my classmates until I saved my classmates in that school bus accident. In this accident, I found the meaning of life. The Godfather told me that my power can save others. That's why I want to be a superhero. Now, I realize that I don't have to exist because of the existence of human beings. I also have my own meaning of existence, and this meaning can be for myself, for my family, and for the Godfather. Coffee shop. Peter finished talking with Lex and just walked out the door when he received a call from Star-Lord. Star-Lord whispered to him about the quarrel between Clark and Azu. Star-Lord turned into a snitch this time, telling him everything in detail. After hanging up the phone, Peter fell into deep thought. He suddenly remembered a novel he had read. In that novel, no one would have thought that the fate of the Earth would change because of 12 hours. When the planet Krypton was facing destruction, Jor-El put the child into a space capsule and sent it into the universe. However, a tiny dust particle in the universe, which was only 30,000th of a cubic centimeter, brushed against the surface of the space capsule, reducing its speed by 1/600 millionth. As a result, its arrival on Earth was delayed by 12 hours. In this way, Superman's spaceship in the novel made an emergency landing in China. Superman took a Chinese name, dated a Chinese girlfriend, and moved a tractor from the field. But the ending of the story was not perfect. Superman fell into complete loneliness. Superman is an alien. He is worshipped and feared by people. He is afraid of losing, but his existence itself is destined to make him lose everything. So he always travels around the world alone, and occasionally floats lonely in the universe looking at this blue planet. Whenever he was in distress but could only digest it slowly by himself, and could not rely on the two important women he had left, he became the loneliest person in the world. He was born with such an identity, but he had to have human emotions. Clark is no longer lonely now, and he has found his meaning as a Superman. But, why does this feel a bit strange? Clark is thinking about his farm. Will he become evil because of this reason? He turned evil because he couldn't get the farm, rebelled after killing Darkseid, and strangled Loki? No, Clark won't be so crazy. Peter kept comforting himself that his Clark would not be such a bastard. But he had to solve the conflict between Clark and Zoo. If these two guys fought over the inheritance of the farm, he would be torn apart. What he worried about did not happen in the end. Peter returned to the farm and saw Clark and Zoo in the living room. In front of them stood a nervous teenager. Dad, seeing Peter come in, Boom immediately ran over and pounced on him. What happened? Peter glanced at the stranger in the living room and asked Boom. His name is Javier. He said he encountered some strange things and was treated as a slave to work on a farm beside the highway. Bayo said in a dark tone. It turns out that there are people who really treat people as slaves. Dad, why don't we hire some black people? Chapter 635 Azu's Mouth Attack. Peter fell silent for a moment when facing the question raised by Boom Boom about recruiting black people. Looking at Javier, Peter lowered his head and whispered to Boom Boom, who do you want to recruit, Ike? Boom Boom thought Peter was moved, and said to him, or the female fox aunt who came to our house for dinner last time, let her stop being a superhero in Metropolis and come back to work for you, Dad. After hearing what Boom Boom said, Peter was completely sure. Boom Boom is a very serious racial knight, even more serious than Azu and Raven. Poor time assassin Ike, now there is no possibility for Boom Boom to have a relationship beyond friendship. Peter exhaled a sigh of relief. This is not bad, after all. Although Ike is a good kid, he is a black man after all. No, Boom Boom, you have to understand that we never oppress anyone. Sometimes we recruit black people just for convenience, that's all. Seeing Boom Boom's puzzled expression, Peter said to him in a natural voice, you can say this in front of outsiders in the future. Understand, I understand, Dad. Boom Boom immediately nodded obediently. Although he didn't quite understand what his father said, he nodded obediently and agreed. After stroking his hair, Peter walked to the somewhat nervous Javier. Hello, sir, I'm Javier. Javier was affected by Peter's aura, stood up and stretched out his hand to him tremblingly. Hello, Peter shook his hand and asked him, can you tell me what happened, Javier? Of course, Javier nodded and told Peter what he had told Persephone. After listening to Javier's words, Peter frowned. After thinking for a while, he said to Clark and Star-Lord, Clark, Star-Lord, come with me to Joe McNally's farm. He wanted to see what this guy was doing. Okay, Dad, Joe McNally's farm. Peter parked the car outside the farm and met Joe McNally. Joe McNally, who is an incapable figure, wearing jeans and a lot of dirt on his clothes, wiped the sweat off his face and shook hands with Peter. You are a rare visitor, Mr. Patrick, Joe McNally said to him in a good mood. I used to go fishing with Jonathan, and he often told me stories about you. You are a legend in Smallville, thank you. While Peter thanked him, he turned his gaze to the farmers working in the fields. It seems that these are all new employees you recruited. I heard that your farm, Mr. McNally, has expanded rapidly recently. I thought that the last meteorite shower destroyed all your crops. Joe McNally looked around his farm and proudly replied to Peter, although it is a bit strange to say this, I increasingly feel that I have turned a blessing in disguise. I realize that as long as I work hard, there is nothing I can't do. That sounds reasonable. I heard that the deputy sheriff came to the farm today. Peter was silent for a while and asked him, what happened? He's checking illegal immigrants. Joe McNally pointed to the employees working and said to Peter, you must know that my people entered the country legally, so there shouldn't be any big problems. Peter nodded, and did not continue to ask about the issue of illegal immigrants, but talked about other topics. My tractor has a problem. The axle is broken. I originally wanted to go to the store to buy one, but I happened to pass by here, so I wanted to ask you for the trick to increase farm production. By the way, I came to see if you have axle pins. Axle? Joe McNally was stunned for a moment. Then nodded and said, there shouldn't be many tricks. I just got a blessing in disguise, but I should be able to solve the axle problem. I'll go to the warehouse to have a look. After smiling at Peter, Joe McNally walked towards the warehouse. After Joe McNally left, Peter took Star-Lord and Clark to ask the farmers about Francisco. Excuse me, I want to know where Francisco is. Do you know him? The farmer who was working looked at Peter, shook his head and continued to work. Star-Lord and Clark asked for a while, but they didn't get any clues. When Peter was about to continue asking other people, an old Mexican man with a beard came over and whispered to him, tree number 5, what? Peter was stunned when he heard this strange word. What does it mean? He was about to ask the other party in detail what big tree number 5 meant when Joe McNally came over. Found it? Joe McNally came over and threw the pin to Peter. You're lucky, the package hasn't been opened yet. Peter took the unopened pin thrown by the other party and thanked him. Thank you, Mr. McNally, you helped me a lot. After thanking him, Peter took Star-Lord and Clark and walked towards the car parked outside. How is it? Can you see anything with your perspective eyes? Peter asked Clark as he walked. Clark shook his head and said, No, Godfather, I don't see anything suspicious. Is it because he hid too deep? Star-Lord frowned and said, also, what does the man mean by big tree number 5? Peter didn't say anything and cast his eyes on the vast farm in front of him. This guy is not as honest as he appears to be. Obviously, he didn't tell the truth. At Patrick's farm, when Peter returned, Persephone was helping Javier check Granville's dry cleaners. There are 3 dry cleaners in Granville. As long as we can find the names of the dry cleaners' employees, we can find your mother, Persephone said to Javier while using the computer to search. Thank you, Javier thanked Persephone gratefully. Hearing the sound of the door being pushed open, several people raised their heads and looked at Peter. Wei, who was sitting next to Persephone, stood up and asked Peter, how is it, Dad? Nothing was gained. An employee told us about big tree number 5. Javier, do you know what this means? Star-Lord asked Javier. Javier shook his head with a confused look in his eyes. No, it's the first time I heard this name too. Well, next we just need to find big tree number 5, and we should be able to find the whereabouts of your friend. Star-Lord saw the other party's disappointed look and comforted him. Don't worry, we will help you find your friend soon. At night, Raven, Tom, Mark and Loki returned to the farm from Hogwarts, and saw the stranger who suddenly appeared in the house. Then is that another child that Dad picked up? Raven suddenly felt that her whole mood was not good. Originally, because of the arrival of Bakugo and Wei, her father had less and less time to spend with her. Now there was suddenly another child in the family. Wouldn't her father have no time to spend with her at all? Tom, who was standing by, did not show his dissatisfaction, but his face became very bad. He never expressed his opinion on the arrival of Bakugo and Wei, but he was also very unhappy about his father being shared. If it weren't for the magic of Hogwarts that could attract some of his interest, he would probably be even more depressed. He is Javier, an immigrant from Mexico. Because of some special circumstances, he is temporarily living with us. Peter saw the different expressions of the 4 people and explained after knowing that they were thinking wrongly. In other words, he is not the new child that Dad picked up, Mark asked aloud. Of course not. Peter glanced at Mark, who did not hide his emotions. You really hope so, right, Mark? Seeing the dissatisfied look from Peter, Mark quickly shut up. After dinner, Clark was about to go back to his room to rest, and just as he entered the door, he heard a knock on the door. John, Clark looked puzzled as he watched Azu come in. What's up? No, I just want to talk to you about the farm. Azu sat down and said to Clark with a serious expression, although I am very dissatisfied with your claim to protect this farm, Clark, one day I will prove to my father, who is the person that my father trusts the most, I am the real hero. Azu thought about it for a day and felt that he was a little embarrassed when facing Clark's verbal attack at the scene of the car accident during the day. It was like losing an argument. The more he thought about it afterwards, the angrier he got. Why didn't he use tough and domineering words to deal with Clark? Azu, who had been thinking for a day, decided to come and express his determination to Clark. I am a native of my country, and you, Clark, if you want to snatch the farm from me, I will deal with you like I did when we were kids. If you try to take it away from me, then I don't mind making you afraid of me. After speaking harshly to the stunned Clark, Azu got up and left, leaving Clark, who didn't know what expression to show. Azu flew away from the farm in a very unhappy mood. Flying to the towering windmill in the endless fields, Zu stopped and landed on the top of the flying car. He punched the flying car hard with his fist, took a deep breath facing the windmill, and then kept panting to calm his breathing. I am a native of my country. I can do whatever I want. No one can stop me except my father, not even Clark. After whispering this to himself, Zu looked up into the distance. As a result, he saw 5 large trees with lush branches and leaves, arranged in an evenly spaced manner. Zu immediately thought of the number 5 big tree mentioned by Star-Lord during the day. Number 5 big tree, could it be these 5 very iconic big trees? Zu was puzzled and used his perspective eyes to take a look. As a result, the scene he saw with his perspective eyes stunned him. Chapter 636, Migotuk Simpson? Late at night, Peter, Clark, Zu, and Star-Lord stood at Joe McNally's farm. The farm was unusually busy at this time. Police cars with flashing red lights were going in and out of the farm. Ambulances and related medical staff also entered the farm. The open space under the lush fir trees had been blocked by the police with yellow cordons. The police from the technical department were carefully digging the soil. Some of the bodies that had been dug out were placed on the ground. The relevant police took pictures of the bodies, and the sound of clicking kept echoing in the air. "This smell is not very good." Chandler covered his nose with a handkerchief and walked towards Peter and others. "Thanks, Peter. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have discovered that there is still a serial killer here." He thanked Peter, who called the police. "No, not me. The person you should thank is John." Peter cast his eyes on Zhu. It was John who found these bodies. An hour ago, when he was about to rest, Zhu knocked on the door and said that he knew where the big tree number 5 was. When Peter was about to follow Zhu to tree number 5, the boy told him that all the bodies were buried under tree number 5. With his trust in Zhu, Peter called the police directly. "I should thank John for that." Chandler stepped forward to thank Zhu. "You're welcome. This is what I should do." Although he said so, Zhu felt a little guilty. His original purpose was to express his depressed mood, but he accidentally saw this situation. Should I say that he was lucky or unlucky? Zhu fell into deep thought. "Have you found out the identity of the deceased?" Peter did not expect Zhu to have so much drama in his heart. He frowned and asked Chandler. "They are all illegal workers. Their documents are all forged. If other people find out they are missing, they won't call the police." Clark asked from the side. "Why don't they call the police?" "Because once they call the police, they will be deported." Chandler shrugged his shoulders at Clark. "Once they are deported, they can never return to the United States." "But there is good news," Chandler said to Peter and Clark. "The good news is that Joe McNally can no longer hurt others. You have stopped his evil deeds, and he will be punished." Clark listened to Chandler's words and fell into silence. Looking at the bodies dug out of the soil, his heart was extremely heavy. Walking to a body that had just been dug out, looking at the other person's unusually young face, Clark's heart was overwhelmed by sadness. Although it is not certain yet, he has a hunch in his heart. The body of the teenager with a Hispanic appearance in front of him is Francisco, who he found for Javier. Seeing Clark's sad expression, Peter came over and put his hand on his shoulder. He didn't say anything, but just patted Clark on the shoulder. "I promised Javier that I would find him a friend." Clark's eyes showed sadness, and he whispered to Peter, "I didn't expect this to happen." "No, it's not your fault, Clark." Peter comforted Clark. "Sometimes we can't control the ending of the story. It's not your fault, nor is it your responsibility. You don't need to blame yourself for all the mistakes." "I know, Godfather." Clark's eyes were full of sadness. "I know there are many things we can't change. I just feel a little uncomfortable." Peter was talking to Clark, and 2 policemen escorted Joe McNally to the police car. "You'd better tell the truth. Are there any bodies in other places?" The policeman escorting Joe McNally asked him bluntly. "No." "Are you sure? Don't try to deceive it. This is for your own good." McNally, seeing the police escorting Joe McNally to leave, Clark's eyes were attracted. "The kid who ran away looked for you, Peter Patrick, right?" Joe McNally stopped and asked Peter, who was standing aside. With anger flashing in his eyes, he questioned Peter. "Did you call the police?" Padraic, without waiting for Peter to answer, Star-Lord, who was also full of anger, asked him, "Why did you do this? You killed these innocent people just because they wanted to escape." Facing Star-Lord's angry questioning, Joe McNally's expression became calm instead. "When you are in a desperate situation, you have to find a way out." "What desperate way?" Joe McNally looked at the farm. "This farm is my life. It's everything to me. It's the only thing my father left me. I can't lose it. For this, I am willing to do anything." Star-Lord asked him in disbelief. "Just because of this, you enslave the laborers, and once they want to escape, you kill them to silence them?" "Yes." Joe McNally was a little choked up when he mentioned the farm left by his father, but soon his eyes became sharp. "I won't let 2 potato diggers destroy everything I have. I won't let them lock me up." Joe McNally stared at Peter and Star-Lord angrily. "You will never know what this farm means to me. You will never know." Seeing that Joe McNally's emotions were a little out of control, Chandler waved to the 2 policemen holding him. "Take him away." The 2 policemen nodded and prepared to take him away, but they didn't expect that something strange would happen in the next second. Joe McNally broke free from the control of the 2 policemen and knocked them down with his elbows. His body shook rapidly in the eyes of everyone who couldn't believe it. Then, under the gaze of the stunned police at the scene, Joe McNally went straight into the ground. Seeing Joe McNally escape so easily, everyone at the scene was a little confused. Peter was also stunned for a moment. "What is this? The 2 Zingson of the United States." Peter suddenly understood. No wonder this guy's farm has such a high yield. It turns out that the owner of the agricultural bank has personally transformed into the land god. Clark and Azu, the two came to the ground above where Joe McNally disappeared. Looking at the soft ground under their feet, the two looked at each other. "This guy can actually walk on the ground," Azu said in shock. "I only know about Earth escape and the myths and legends about Tauta." After stepping on the soft ground with his feet, Azu suddenly had an idea. If he could get this guy to his farm and make him a human excavator, wouldn't the farm's output increase several times? Azu, with his eyes darting around, began to think about the land god. The next day, early in the morning. Smallville, Luthor Manor. Lex Luthor sat in front of the computer, watching the video playing inside. The police in the video were wearing protective clothing and cleaning and digging corpses under a big tree. Corpses were dug out one by one, and even through the video, Lex could feel the horrible smell of the corpses. While watching the video with a frown on his face, the door of the room was pushed open with a creak. A middle-aged man in a suit and glasses with a scholarly air pushed the door and walked in. Seeing the other party come in, Lex pressed the pause button on the video. He stood up with anger on his face and said to the other party rudely, "I asked you to keep an eye on McNally's farm, but you ignored the serial killings as a minor detail. If it weren't for this accident, would I never know about it?" The middle-aged man hurriedly explained to Lex, "I'm sorry, Mr. Luthor, I swear to you, I really didn't know he was murdering farm workers. Isn't your eyesight not good enough?" Lex walked up to the middle-aged man and took off his glasses. Dr. Ball, how do you explain to me these bodies found by the police? Dr. Ball organized his words and said to Lex, who was looking directly at him, "I only know that a meteorite from outer space gave him a power that allows him to move minerals and escape underground." Before Dr. Ball finished speaking, Lex interrupted him. "You should understand, Dr. Bauer, I spent millions on research, not to send myself to jail. Hurry up and find Joe McNally before the police, and before Mr. Patrick." Lex mentioned Peter again. "Don't let Mr. Patrick know that I bought a McNally farm, Mr. Luthor. You know, this guy hides 3 feet underground, appears and disappears mysteriously. No one can find him." Hearing Dr. Bauer's words, Lex, who was originally planning to leave, turned around. Then digged 3 feet underground. With a cold expression on his face, he said to Dr. Bauer, "Find him out of the ground for me, understand?" Pushing the door open and walking out, Lex blew the breeze to calm himself down. Back in the study, he took a deep breath and walked to the bookcase. Pressing the switch hidden in the bookcase in front of him slowly moved away in front of him, and a closed space appeared in front of him. Lex walked into the hidden secret room in the study. The secret room was illuminated by dazzling lights, and several computers were placed in the corner. Various newspaper clippings and media reports about Peter were hung on the wall. Standing in front of the desk, Lex looked at the newspaper clippings on the wall. Peter, Clark, Azu, Raven and Mark. All the information about Peter and his children was posted on it. Lex lowered his head and picked up the photo frame on the table. The photo in the photo frame was a photo of him and Peter when he was a child. He was bald when he was 5 or 6 years old, and Peter, who now looks to be in his 40s, is still the same, with no changes. It seems that youth has stopped on the other's face. Recalling the scene when he was chased by a monster as a child and was saved by Peter, Lex fell into deep thought. "Mr. Patrick, what exactly is this existence?" Chapter 637. My name is not Chu Yuxun. My name is Law Enforcement Officer Smallville. That year, with dazzling red hair, he happily sat in his own helicopter and had a deep communication with his father. Later, he walked into a large cornfield. Suddenly, a meteorite fell from the sky and set off a gust of wind, inexplicably causing him to lose his proud hair. Because of his hatred for his father, he left the manor, but was chased by terrifying creatures lurking in the dark. In the face of danger, it was Mr. Patrick who saved him. On the one hand, he was grateful to Peter. But on the other hand, he kept reminding himself, Mr. Patrick must not be an earthling. The origins of his 8 children are also full of weirdness and inexplicability. He wants to explore the secrets behind Peter and his family, but he knows that once he touches the truth, it will hurt the feelings between them. His feelings for Peter are similar to those between him and his father. So he has been struggling with contradictions. He wants to investigate Peter and touch the truth, but he is afraid that the truth will hurt Peter. He does not trust aliens, but he is full of trust in Peter. Mr. Alien Padraic. Lex said the 2 words again and fell into thought. Padraic Farm. Peter didn't know that Lex was involved in Joe McNally's serial murder case. At this time, he was talking to Chandler on the other end of the phone. Chandler called to tell him that Joe McNally had not been found yet. Considering that the other party might retaliate against Javier, he reminded Peter to pay attention to Javier's safety. Peter glanced at Javier, who was watching TV in the living room, and hung up the phone. He hadn't told the other party that Francisco was dead. "Dad," Peter just hung up the phone. Wei came over with a worried face. "Can I talk to you?" "Of course." Peter touched Wei's red hair. "Where do you want to talk with Dad?" In the secret base of the barn, Wei raised her head and asked Peter sadly, "Dad, is Francisco dead?" Peter was stunned after hearing this. Did Clark or Star-Lord tell Wei? "It's not certain yet. The police are still investigating." Peter lowered his head and rubbed Wei's hair to comfort her. "I know, Dad, Francisco is dead. Clark has told me." Wei directly said that it was Clark who told her. "Dad, you said Clark would become a superhero. There are many superheroes in this world. Do superheroes really make the world a better place?" Peter listened to Wei's words and glanced at the corner of the stairs. He could see that Bomb was hiding behind the corner and eavesdropping on the two people's conversation, but he didn't expose them. "Why do you think so, Wei?" "Because I see that there are still many tragedies happening in this world, like the death of those workers at McNally Farm. You told me what a superhero is the day before yesterday, Dad. I am a little confused." "I am confused whether heroes have changed the world," Wei said what she thought. Peter raised his head and looked at the cornfield in the distance. "Do you remember the news you watched, Wei?" Peter half squatted down and looked into his daughter's eyes and asked. "What?" "Dad, it was the report about the 13-year-old girl who stepped forward to save the 6-year-old girl." Peter was talking about the shooting that happened in Denver last Friday. A 13-year-old girl named Kaylin was also present when the shooting occurred. She tried to save a 6-year-old girl named Veronica, but Veronica's pregnant mother survived after being shot 3 times. Remember, Wei? There were more than just Kaylin who stepped forward to rescue others. There were at least 3 other teenagers. And the girl named Kaylin was a fan of Batman. The clothes and hat she wore at the time had Batman logos on them. Peter slowly said to his daughter, "You know, Wei, Bruce is Batman. You are very familiar with him. Do you think he has made Gotham a better place?" Wei thought about it and said confusedly, "I don't know." Peter nodded and said, "Before Batman appeared, Gotham had been degenerating without a bottom line. The people there were desperate and crazy. Batman told the citizens of Gotham, who were already desperate, that, yes, evil will always be there, yes, darkness is difficult to dispel, but there are people there to fight against it. And kind people will never be alone." Peter said to Wei, when he appeared in the dark Gotham as a living hero, "Think about how many people would be inspired by him, just like Kellen." Although Peter usually keeps a distance from these positive energies, he still tried to convey some positive things to his 2 daughters. If his 2 daughters end up with distorted values and becoming supervillains, he would be completely screwed. Wei listened to Peter's words and nodded. Peter stroked his daughter's short red hair and continued, "I want to tell you a story, Wei. Are you willing to listen?" "Yes, Dad." Peter coughed and said to Wei's expectant eyes, "One day, Batman, that is, Bruce, returned to Crime Alley. He couldn't help but violate the law and save his parents, so, Batman disappeared. The incident of Bruce's parents dying in Crime Alley was rewritten and erased, so Bruce Wayne became an ordinary little boy and grew up to be a normal young man who is not a vigilante. But soon he realized that he had made a mistake, and he had to go and find Batman. When he saw the young Bruce Wayne coming out of the manor, he saw something in his young self's eyes, something he had never had before. Bruce was happy." Peter paused when he said this. Even if he had the slightest choice, he would hope that his childhood self was happy, but he could only remind Batman of the normal timeline, and he made that choice, to get everything back on track. On one side is a normal life and his parents who grew up with him, and on the other side is Gotham and even the whole world, his responsibility. For Bruce Wayne, who has become a bat, this is not a choice, even though it means facing the scattered pearls again and again, and facing the death of his parents again. Peter looked into V's eyes and gently held his daughter's hand. Not only Batman, the Flash, Batman, including all other superheroes, are facing such failures again and again, too many that cannot be reached, too many that cannot be saved. This pressure, this darkness, constantly attacks them and tortures them, and the reason they choose to become heroes is to never give up in the pain and suffering, It's just because some people in this world happen to have abilities, and heroes choose to take responsibility. Feeling the warmth that Peter passed on to her, Wei gently reached out and held Peter's thumb. For the citizens of Gotham, or the citizens of other cities, for the people of this world, having such a hero means that they may, although only may, survive, or at least, die like a human being, rather than as garbage that can be thrown everywhere. Yes, in the world they live in. It has become a little better because of superheroes. Peter gently picked up his daughter, and this is what Dad wants to tell you. They have changed the world and made it a little better. After listening to Peter's story, Wei gently leaned her head into Peter's arms. Dad, I will be the hero you expect. I will make the world a better place, and I will also be your hero, so that I will always protect you. Listening to his daughter's confession, Peter became happy. I am very much looking forward to my Wei becoming a hero who can stand on his own. I've decided, Dad. Wei clenched her fists and said to Peter, from now on, I will be called Law Enforcement Officer Smallwool. Wei gave herself a resounding name. I am the Law Enforcement Officer of the Patrick family, protecting justice, protecting the farm and Dad. Peter, aren't you called Chu Yuxun? Hearing Peter's complaints, Wei scratched her hair. Dad, who is Chu Yuxun? Nothing. Dad is joking with you. Peter coughed, touched his daughter's hair and skipped the topic. Bao in the stairwell was not like Wei, who listened to Peter's words completely. At this time, she was thinking about what name to give herself. Wei is called Law Enforcement Officer Smallwool. What should she be called? Bao fell into distress. In the afternoon, Persephone found out which dry cleaner Javier's mother was. So Peter asked Clark to drive the other party to the Talon Club to meet Javier's mother. Javier's mother had already arrived at the club. In the speeding car, Javier asked Clark worriedly, Clark, have you found Francisco? Looking at the other party's worried expression, Clark did not choose to continue hiding it. Sorry, Francisco is dead. Dead. Javier was struck by lightning when he heard the news. Stop the car. Javier asked Clark to stop the car, pushed open the door and ran out. Clark got out of the driver's seat and chased after the other party. Wait, Javier. Javier ran to the cornfield, tears streaming down his face. He took out the amulet from his neck and threw it into the cornfield. It's all my fault. I hurt him. If I hadn't suggested him to escape, he wouldn't have died. If I had given him the necklace, he wouldn't have died. It's all my fault. Clark came over to comfort the other party. No, it's not your fault. We don't know the ending of the story, so we can't see the future. As soon as Clark finished speaking, there was a boom sound in the cornfield in the distance. Chapter 638 Lex Luthor, who is the real hero? Javier looked at Clark in horror. Did you hear that, Clark? Javier looked at Clark in horror as he stepped back. Yes, I know. Back off, Javier. Clark's expression became serious, and he pulled Javier's hand and asked him to back off behind him. Francisco was taken away by him. Clark, we have to go. Looking at the corn falling down in pieces in front of him, and listening to the rumbling sound getting closer and closer, Javier swallowed hard and said, It's okay, I won't let him hurt you. Taking a deep breath, Clark said to Javier, Stand behind me and don't move. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a loud bang. The ground under Clark's feet exploded with a bang, and dust quickly spread. Then Clark was pulled under the ground by an invisible force and disappeared in an instant. Watching Clark disappear in front of him, Javier looked around helplessly. Clark, where are you? Clark, looking around with a horrified look, Javier called Clark's name as he stepped back. The only response he got was the rumble in the distance, and the atmosphere of uneasiness spread everywhere. Javier raised his eyes and saw that the corn fell in a line in front of him. The monster that pulled Clark into the ground was rushing towards him. No. Javier, with fear in his eyes, immediately turned around and ran forward at the fastest speed. But the rumble behind him was getting closer and closer, as if it would swallow him up in the next second. Just when he thought he was going to suffer the same fate as Francisco, a boom sound came. A figure was thrown out from the ground and fell heavily to the ground. Javier, who heard the sound, stopped and looked at the figure thrown out on the ground with astonishment. Clark, is that you? Clark swallowed his saliva and looked at the figure on the ground with an uneasy and fearful look. He thought the guy who was thrown out and covered in mud would be Clark. As a result, when he got closer, he found that it was the farmer Joe McNally, who was in a coma and his chest was heaving. There were footsteps behind him. Hearing the footsteps behind him, Javier turned around and saw Clark, who was walking towards him slowly with a lot of mud on his clothes. Clark, seeing that Clark was safe, Javier excitedly came up and hugged him. "Great, Clark, you're okay, I'm a body of steel." Clark smiled slightly and said to the excited Javier, "He can't hurt me." After talking to the other party for a few words, Clark squatted down, picked up the amulet that Javier had thrown away on the ground and handed it to him. "How did you do it?" Javier looked up in surprise, took the amulet, and asked Clark. He didn't expect that after Clark was pulled into the ground, he could still fight against Joe McNally and defeat him. "This is my secret, you will keep it secret for me?" Right, Clark hoped that the other party could keep the secret for him. "Of course, I will keep your secret. I swear, I won't tell anyone. I'm not a big mouth like some guys." Javier made a promise to Clark that he would never be a snitch. Clark, at the Talon Club, Javier finally reunited with his mother. The mother and son hugged each other tightly with excitement. Chloe and Lana were watching the mother and son talking to each other, and their feelings were also very complicated. "Thank you, Chloe and Lana," Clark thanked the two of them. Lana and Chloe also made a lot of efforts in finding Javier's mother. Chloe personally went out to find out the whereabouts of Javier's mother. "I just contributed a little bit," Chloe shrugged her shoulders. "The ending is not bad. The villain was punished, and the protagonist of the story finally reunited with their mother. It's a happy ending," Lana nodded. "Yes, a happy ending of a fairy tale, but Clark seems a little unhappy." Chloe cast her eyes on Clark and said, "I guess Clark missed his mother a little bit because he is also a wanderer." "No, I just thought of something else," Clark said with a wry smile. "Do you miss home too, Clark?" Lana handed her a cup of coffee and asked him curiously. Lana and Chloe both knew Clark's Kryptonian identity, so they did not hide it from each other. "No, for me, my home has always been the farm. The line between Kent Farm and Patrick Farm is the trajectory of my destiny and my original home." Clark suddenly remembered sentimentally what the Godfather once said to him. "If you stand in the position of childhood and look into the future, you will say that your future is uncertain, you will say that your future is limitless, but if you stand at the end and look at the trajectory of your life, you can only see one road, you can only see a destined road, you don't know what fate is, you can only know what fate is. I don't know where I am standing now, looking into the future." Okay, Chloe didn't expect Clark to be sentimental. After she and Lana looked at each other, she asked cautiously, "You haven't encountered any trouble recently, have you, Clark?" No. Clark was a little depressed. He was embarrassed to say about Zoo's declaration of war on him. "Should I say that I was unhappy with Zoo because of the inheritance of the farm?" Seeing that Clark seemed unwilling to say more, Lana quickly turned to other topics. Gently holding up the coffee, Lana pretended to be indifferent and asked Clark, "Clark, how is Mr. Patrick?" I haven't seen Mr. Patrick much recently. I have been busy with college." "Is he okay?" Lana also went to college after graduating from high school. But she did not follow Clark to Piltover University, but went to Kansas Central University, which was the closest to her home. Chloe also went to the same university as her. Clark looked at Lana with a depressed mood. She was in a worse mood. Even though she was in college, Lana was still particularly concerned about the Godfather's affairs and couldn't forget them. The next day, Zoo went to Smallville Central Hospital alone. Joe McNally, who attacked Clark yesterday, was defeated by Clark and sent to this hospital by the police. Zoo naturally would not let this natural excavator go. Isn't it much more useful than the Black Man? Move or and escape underground. If this guy is caught in his own farm, wouldn't the farm's agricultural product output increase several times? And the family doesn't need to hire an excavator. Adhering to the principle of waste utilization, Zoo wants to sneak this guy into the farm. As for how to explain to his father, Zoo's plan is to hide it from his father first and wait until the right time to tell him. After entering the hospital, Azu soon received a piece of news that surprised him. Joe McNally had been sent to the Medical Research Center under the Metropolitan Luthor Group. Lex Luthor. Hearing this name, Azu groped his chin and fell into deep thought. Is he Leno Luthor's son? His impression of Lex was still the bald man with a double chin, wearing a suit and a confident face in the previous Injustice world. This guy is definitely a genius. The opponent in the Injustice world has endless resources in almost all technological fields in the world. Lex Group has created advanced artificial intelligence, transportation, computer hardware, and military technology. and Lex Group also has a medical department. Although he has the strength to launch a medical revolution to treat his baldness, he did not do so. So this led Azu to always suspect that the other party likes a bald hairstyle. Lex Luthor in the Injustice world wears golden armor and has great power. He can use the laser beam on the wrist of the armor to attack the enemy. I just don't know if Lex Luthor in my world will become a man who drives a meteor to fight in the future. Azu was thinking about Lex, but he didn't expect that Lex himself had come to the hospital. Lex, who had just finished the handover with the police, was about to leave, but was stopped by a voice. Lex, hearing someone calling his name, Lex turned around and saw Azu walking slowly towards him. John, because Lex and Azu were familiar with Peter, they had also talked a few words, so they were not strangers. Are you busy, Lex? Azu came over, crossed his arms in front of his chest, and said to him, I heard that you took Joe McNally away. Yes, the doctors at the Central Hospital believe that McNally's condition needs further research, and the medical conditions here are not satisfactory, Lex said in a natural tone. Really? But I think you have ulterior motives, Lex. Don't think about making trouble. I know that you and your father have always been obsessed with Smallwool. If you provoke me, I will let you know that I am not a good person when I am in a bad temper. Azu warned Lex. Since Lex took Joe McNally away, Zu couldn't go and snatch him away, or his father would definitely punish him if he found out. He could only let the natural excavator stay in Lex's hands first, and then find a way to snatch it back later. In the future, don't interfere in Smallwool's affairs. After threatening him, Zu exhaled and turned to leave. Looking at Zu's back as he left, Lex narrowed his eyes. Zu's words did not scare him, but instead aroused his fighting spirit. Since this guy looked down on him, he would use his wisdom and talent to fight against Zu, this bastard, and let everyone know who is the real hero. Chapter 639, Aliens, The Coming Cosmic Crisis. The next day. Patrick's farm. Mark was reading yesterday's news. Serial killer Joe McNally has been arrested. The police said that the specific identity information of the relevant labor victims is currently being processed. Mark put down the newspaper and said to Peter with some discomfort, Dad, why did Joe McNally kill so many laborers? This matter is a bit complicated to explain. Peter was tasting the coffee made by his daughter Bayo for him. After hearing this, he said to Mark, because he wanted to make his farm better. The meteorite shower destroyed his farm. He tried to rebuild his farm. This obsession constantly tortured him and made him go to extremes. Stirring the coffee, Peter said to Mark, he regards the revival of the farm as more important than anything else. In other words, he regards the farm as his only one farm. Mark repeated the word in a low voice, raised his head and said to Peter, Dad, I may have the same idea as him. What idea? Peter looked at Mark in surprise. For me, the farm is also a very important thing in my life, because it is the connection between my father and me in this world. Mark put down the newspaper, thinking of the scenes of his life on the farm, and said to Peter with mixed feelings, if I can, I will also protect the farm like him. I'm not saying that what he did was right. Joe McNally killed many innocent workers. He is an unforgivable criminal. I mean, his obsession with the farm. Mark was afraid that Peter would misunderstand that he sympathized with the murderer, so he quickly explained to Peter. Well, I know what you want to say, Mark. Peter came up and rubbed Mark's hair. He found that Mark had grown up very fast recently. Although he had only been on the farm for a few years, he looked like a teenager of 12 or 13 years old. For you now, Mark, this is still too early. You don't need to frame your life so rigidly. Peter decided to give up his obsession with the farm. Otherwise, he was really worried that this kid would do something dangerous when he grew up. If Mark fights with Azu, Raven and others because of the farm in the future, won't his farm be demolished? After all, this kid is a Vitrum. As far as he knows, Vitrum people will awaken superpowers during puberty. As the strongest race in the universe, the Vitrum people have extremely powerful superpowers such as super strength, flight, and rapid self-healing. And they also have a strong physique. He remembered that in the original world line, Mark's biological father, the all-round man, had extremely high physical strength, could survive the high temperature of the star, was immune to the extremely cold environment of space, and ignored the influence of diseases. In addition, the opponent's resistance to impact force was also amazingly high. Usually only the top strong people in the universe or other Vitrum people could hurt him. The solid body was a weapon for him. Specifically, he could transform into a human cannonball through super high-speed flight, and destroy a civilization through back-and-forth collisions. In terms of healing, the Vitrum people can heal themselves at an amazing speed after being injured, and have a strong ability to repair physical injuries. The wounds that are fatal to ordinary creatures, including fractures, broken limbs, massive blood loss, organ ruptures, etc., can be easily repaired by the genetic ability of the Vitrum people. Only a serious injury to the heart will pose a fatal threat to the Vikings. The strong self-healing ability allows the Vikings to recover their physical strength quickly, so they can fight for a long time without rest. And the Vikings have an extremely long lifespan, and they will greatly slow down the aging rate after reaching a certain age. Mark can live for at least thousands of years, and his upper limit of lifespan is still unknown. If Mark wants to rob the farm in the future, it is estimated that only Clark in normal state can fight him. Raven and Star-Lord, who are in full force, may also defeat him. Raven has the 3 Palaces demons sealed in her body, and Star-Lord's divine power is not covered. However, these 2 naughty children of his are usually used to slacking off, so it is not easy to expect them to explode in battle. Peter seriously suspects that the condition for them to explode is that the farm is destroyed. Or he dies, or is seriously injured by others, which may stimulate their anger awakening. Thinking of this, Peter sighed slightly. Anyway, he and the farm are not good. In the afternoon, because it was the weekend, Peter's children didn't go to school, and the farm was very lively. "Dad, can you take us to the movies?" After lunch, Raven asked Peter, saying that she hoped Peter would take her to the movies. When they heard about the movie, Boom and Wei immediately came up eagerly. The 2 lolly were also very interested in watching movies. What movie? Peter originally planned to go to the Metropolitan's own bar to deal with some trivial matters. After hearing what Raven said, he asked his daughter. "I know." Boom didn't wait for Raven to answer, and said first, "It's Pet Sematary." Pet Sematary. Hearing this name, Peter frowned. Why does it sound like the name of a horror movie? Taking out his mobile phone, Peter browsed the introduction of this movie on the internet. Soon, the specific content of Pet Sematary appeared in his sight. Hank and his wife Rachel moved from the city to a rural town in Maine with their 2 children. Because there were often trucks speeding in front of their home, pets nearby often suffered the tragedy of being crushed to death and then buried in the nearby Indian cemetery. Therefore, this cemetery is called Pet Sematary. It is said that pets killed on the road can be resurrected if buried there, but their temperament will change drastically, which is very scary. Unfortunately, Hank's beloved daughter also died in a car accident on the road. Hank decided to bury his daughter in Pet Sematary despite the opposition of others. Reading the introduction of the movie, Peter fell into silence. How could this be exactly the same as what happened to him? He was attending the funeral of his cousin Louis' son. A dry swamp outside Smallville has the ability to bring dead things back to life due to the impact of meteorites. However, this kind of resurrection cannot bring people back from hell like the Lazarus pool, but activates certain neural signals of dead things, making them zombies with strong desire to attack. As a result, in order to resurrect her son, his cousin's wife buried the body in the swamp. Then there was the massacre in the auditorium. He seriously doubted whether someone listened to his story and adapted this movie. "Dad," Peter was just recalling this past when Raven interrupted him and asked him curiously, "I heard from Clark that you, Clark, Zoo and Lana all experienced the same thing, right?" Without waiting for Peter to answer, Raven suddenly became excited for some reason. "Dad, your cousin buried the bodies in the Pet Sematary, and then many people were infected and turned into zombies. In the end, you led Lana and the others to fight your way out of the auditorium, right?" Hearing Raven's glorious deeds, Bomb and Wei also looked at their father with admiration. It turns out that their father has such an amazing adventure story. Bomb doesn't want to watch movies anymore, he just wants to listen to his father's adventure stories. "Actually, my father and I fought our way out together." Upon hearing Raven's words, Zoo came down from upstairs and said to the others, "At that time, Clark and Lana were so scared that they couldn't even run. I killed the zombies and protected Lana and Clark," Zoo boasted without any embarrassment. "It should be said that besides my father, I am the real hero." Boom, Wei, if you want, I can tell you the story of that day. Seeing Zoo's words going too far, Peter's face suddenly darkened. Will this kid be like Loki, writing a biography about himself in the future and making him the protagonist in it? "Okay, John, there's no need to talk about the story of you being beaten up." After Peter coughed to interrupt Zoo, he asked Raven and others in the room, Who of you wants to go to the metropolis with me this afternoon to watch a movie? After asking, all of Peter's many naughty children, except Tom and Mark, went to the metropolis with him. Even Persephone, the 10,000-year-old homegirl, went out. Tom was lazy by nature and had no interest in movies. Mark was unable to go to the movies because he had made an appointment with a friend nearby and could not break the appointment. When Peter took the kids to the movies, only Mark and Tom were left on the huge farm. In the living room, Mark and his friend Phils, who lived near the farm, were playing with flying flags. Phils was a friend Mark met when he was delivering milk. He was chubby and had a simple personality. Bang! 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 The two were having fun when there was a knock on the door. "I'll go open the door," Phils volunteered to stand up and walk to the door. "I guess it's the small cake you ordered for me, Mark, right? I told you last time that I like cream cakes." Phils opened the door with great expectation and looked at the person outside. He thought it was the takeaway food that Mark ordered for him. "Mark Grayson," the person asked him. Phils looked at the person and was stunned for a moment. Then he closed the door with a bang and walked to the sofa with a deathly pale face. Then he sat down, hugged his legs with both hands, and licked his wounds like a wounded lamb. Seeing his good friend's behavior, Mark was stunned. What does this mean? Did Phil see something that made him doubt the existence of life? "Phils, are you okay?" Mark asked with concern. Chapter 640, Dog-Headed Man and Invincible Young Hero. "Looking for you," Firth whispered, and covered his head with a blanket on the sofa. He didn't want to communicate with this world anymore. Seeing his friend's behavior, Mark walked forward in confusion and opened the door of the living room. After opening the door, Mark was stunned when he saw the person standing outside. To be precise, the person standing outside was not a person, but a dog-headed man. The dog-headed man, wearing a blue-black uniform and a red cloak on his back, with his feet hanging in the air, stretched out his hand to greet Mark. "Hello, Mark, who are you?" Mark recovered from the shock and looked at the dog-headed man in front of him. What happened in this world? Why did a dog-headed man appear at his doorstep and greet him? Did he fall under Tom's spell? Mark first suspected Tom, who didn't go to the movie. Tom had killed Headmaster Dumbledore in the future, and it didn't seem difficult to understand that he wanted to play a trick on him. Mark wanted to take out his wand to recover. But when he thought of a normal person here, he had to give up. Magic cannot be used in front of muggles. In response to Mark's question, the dog-headed man pinched his throat and made the voice of a simple and honest dog in a cartoon. "I am a psychic dog. Fight fire with fire, and magic with magic," the dog-headed man who claimed to be a psychic dog shouted at Mark. "No, it's impossible." Mark felt that this guy was talking nonsense. Psychic dogs are characters in comics, how could they appear in reality? "No, psychic dogs are not real, they are images that appear in comics, I can explain." The psychic dog saw Mark's unfriendly look and immediately raised his hand. Psychic dogs really exist in another dimension. There are countless parallel universes in the universe. There are magic and dogs there, as real as the air you breathe, Mark said speechlessly. "There are dogs in our world too. Dogs are real. You don't need to tell me, then you understand half of it," the psychic dog said happily. His body radiated golden light, and he pointed his finger at Mark. "Next, I will open your mind and let you understand your other half." Seeing that the other party seemed to want to attack him, Mark immediately took a step back. "Hey, I warn you, don't get close to me, don't worry, I'm here too." Before he finished speaking, a dark red magic energy rushed over. With a bang, the psychic dog rolled and smashed out. The psychic dog fell in the courtyard, causing a large cloud of dust. Seeing this scene happening, Mark was stunned for a moment, and then turned his head. In his surprised eyes, he saw Tom holding a magic wand and slowly going up and down the stairs. Phil's next to the sofa had fallen into deep sleep. Without thinking, Mark knew that it was Tom who cast a sleeping spell on Phil's. Seeing Tom appear, Mark was a little ashamed. He had misunderstood Tom just now and thought Tom was so bad. "You should be vigilant enough for strangers, especially this kind of unknown creature, Mark." After saying something to Mark, Tom, who was wearing a school uniform, came down the stairs and walked to his side. Ahem, the psychic dog, who fell to the ground in the yard, covered his chest and tried to stand up. However, due to his leg injury, he could not stand up and had to half kneel on the ground. He looked a little depressed after being cursed. Tom raised his wand and walked out of the living room. Pointing the wand at him, Last chance, who are you? Mark followed Tom and looked at the dog-headed man with puzzled eyes. He did not believe that the other party was a psychic dog. Seeing Tom pointing the wand at him, the dog-headed man reluctantly stretched out his hand and removed his disguise. In the shocked eyes of Mark and Tom, the dog-headed man quickly turned into a mantis man with blue skin all over his body. Mark, you are worse than the dog-headed man just now. Please spare my life, I am not a threat to you, the mantis man half kneeling on the ground begged for mercy from the two. I have spent most of my life on the way to your world, so I am very weak now. Can I stand up? Mark and Tom looked at each other. Tom still frowned, pointed his wand at the mantis man, and asked, answer my question first. My name is Nerzo, I come from the planet Sexer. The mantis man who called himself Nerzo said to Mark, my people sent me to ask for your help. Mark asked in confusion, Sexer? Where is it? It's several star systems away from here, about the same. I mean, if you go, it shouldn't be too far. If you go, forget it, these are not important. Mark listened to the other party's answer and felt that this guy looked a little unreliable. He frowned and asked him, why do you know my name? The rumors about the invincible young man have spread like wildfire. With your speed and your strength, only you can save us and stop the meteor shower from destroying our world. My speed? My strength? Mark felt even more confused when he heard this. What speed and strength? Obviously, he only knew some magic. And when these magics were cast, they were definitely not the opponents of Azu and Clark, who were good at speed and strength. Wait, you seem to be mistaken. I don't have any speed or strength. I only know some magic, I mean, Hogwarts magic and the rune magic my father taught me. Mark said to him, maybe you recognized the wrong person. No, that's right, you are Mark, you are the Vitram. Nerzo said that he would never make a mistake. What is a Vitram? Tom asked Mark in confusion. It was the first time he heard this name. It's an alien race. The Vitram people come from the planet Vitram. They are a violent, bloodthirsty, aggressive race that advocates force. They survive by conquering and ruling other planets. When Mark came, he brought 2 books. The Vitram people were mentioned in these 2 science fiction novels. So Mark knew the relevant information. What he didn't expect was that what was said in the science fiction novels was actually true. Taking a deep breath to calm himself down, Mark continued to explain to Tom, the physiological characteristics of the Vitram people include the ability to fly, move quickly, and have super strength. Their bodies are extremely strong and can withstand the high temperature of stars and the extremely cold environment of the air. They are also highly resistant to physical damage. In addition, the Vitram people have the ability to heal quickly and can recover quickly after being injured. After explaining to Tom, Mark turned his eyes to Nerzo. Hey, Nerzo, right? Your name is, listen, Nerzo, I can't help you, I'm not the invincible young man you want to find, and I don't have the speed and strength you said. Mark thought the other party might have got the wrong person, and he could do nothing about it. Besides, my name is not Mark Grayson, my name is Mark Patrick. And this name was given to me by my father. I'm sorry, I can't help you. Mark asked the other party to get up and said that he could do nothing to help. Are you kidding? Mark. A voice suddenly came from behind the 2 of them. Mark and Tom turned around, and were surprised to see Fields, who was originally under a sleeping spell, walked out. Tom looked at the fat guy shocked. Although he used the lowest level sleeping spell, this guy woke up so quickly? What kind of magic resistance physique is this? Or is it just that this guy is simply thick-skinned and has magic resistance? Tom immediately fell into doubt about his life. Fields walked up to Mark, who was also stunned, and said, this Mr. Zerg came all the way to ask for your help. From that, he paused, showing an embarrassed expression. Sorry, I forgot where you came from, but it doesn't matter. The important thing is that he came to seek your help, Mark, but you rejected him. Mr. Zerg, how many people are there in your race? Give me a rough number. Nerzo was stunned for a moment and replied, 42 billion. Yes, 42 billion Zerg are waiting for you to save. Mark looked at him blankly. Fairs, what's wrong with you? Why am I not afraid anymore? Of course I'm not afraid, because this is an alien. I have always suspected whether there are aliens in the world. Finally, I found it, so of course I'm not afraid. Phil's face showed an excited expression, saying that he is an alien fanatic. Also, Mark, don't you remember what we said when we were playing games? You said that helping others is a very happy thing. Think about it, you can save 42 billion people. Is there anything happier than this? Tom on the other side, looking at Phils who suddenly appeared and chattered, finally couldn't help but raise his wand. Die? Before Phils finished speaking, Tom let him fall again. Finally quiet, maybe I have to cast a forgetfulness spell on him. Mark didn't expect that his friend was still a helpful person. Seeing Tom wanted to release the forgetfulness spell, he immediately stopped him. No, Tom. Don't do that, you will hurt his brain. Whatever you want, as long as you are not afraid that he will leak our secrets. Tom did not insist, put away his wand and shook his head. After stopping Tom's action, Mark said to Nerzo, when Dad comes, you may be able to ask him for help, Nerzo, in the evening. After Peter, Raven and others returned to the farm from the Metropolitan Cinema, they saw strange and weird aliens. You are an alien? Bayo asked Nerzo in shock. Yes, I am from the planet Sexa. What kind of planet is Sexa? Raven asked curiously. This was her first time seeing the Zerg. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 641 Arrival at the World of the Invincible Young Hero. It's hard to describe it clearly, but I believe that if you come to my planet, you should be able to quickly understand the current situation our people are facing, Nerzo said to Raven. Our planet was hit by a meteorite and is now in danger, so I came to ask for help, hoping to get your help. Peter listened to Nerzo's words and frowned even deeper. He could feel that this guy was not telling the truth. And according to what he knew about the world line of the invincible young man in his previous life, the planet of the Sexer people did not encounter any meteor shower attacks. The purpose of this blue mantis man was just to lead Mark there. On the other side, although Raven did not know the development of the script like Peter, she had a keen mental perception. Relying on the mental perception of Nerzo, she quickly knew that this guy was lying. At least this guy named Nerzo did not tell the whole truth. Then can you tell us about the meteor shower that affected you, Raven? With a puzzled face, asked Nerzo to explain the specific details of the meteor shower. Well, this is a bit complicated. I mean, it's not something I can explain in a few words. It has to start from a long time ago. Nerzo looked very embarrassed. No matter how long ago it started, I think that and we will be very patient. Raven shrugged her shoulders, indicating that she would listen attentively. Under Raven's relentless pursuit, Nerzo soon began to sweat profusely. Okay, Raven. Seeing that Nerzo was about to collapse, Peter stood up. He suspected that if he didn't stand up, this guy would be exposed by Raven on the spot. Nerzo, I will consider your request. Peter looked at Nerzo who was stunned, and said to him slowly, before I make a decision, you can stay on the farm temporarily. Nerzo looked at Mark who seemed to be hesitant to speak, and thanked Peter. Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Patrick. Nerzo now wanted to find out why the father of the invincible young man in the parallel world was this man named Peter Patrick. He had a strong curiosity to explore Peter's identity. In addition, he was puzzled as to why the invincible young hero said that his speed and strength were average, and he was only good at magic. Could it be that the invincible young hero in this world was a magician? Late at night, in the room of Bomb and Wei, Peter made the beds for his two daughters. Okay, it's getting late, Bomb, Wei, you two are not allowed to get up and move around secretly in the middle of the night. Peter caught Bomb and Wei sneaking out of the room at 12 o'clock in the middle of the night 2 days ago. So he paid more attention to their movements after midnight. Buckbeak had been put in Asgard, the world tree. Raven and Bomb were also warned by him not to go out at night. Dad, that was Wei's idea. Although I agreed, Bomb blinked, indicating that he only followed Wei and sneaked out at night to ride Buckbeak. No matter whose idea it was, you are not allowed to run around at night. Peter stepped forward and gently scratched Bomb's nose and said, Dad, Wei didn't take her sister's backstab too seriously. She was thinking about what Nerzo said. Dad, will you really decide to help the Sexes? Wei raised her head, sat up from the bed and asked Peter. Do you want to help them, Wei? Peter walked in front of Wei and gently touched Wei's hair. I don't know, Dad, I just don't think he's a bad guy. Wei said what she thought. Maybe we can help them, under the premise of ensuring our safety. Boom Boom was not too enthusiastic about helping the Mantis Man. She was interested in the parallel world and Sexus that the other party mentioned. Dad, I think we can go to Sexus, Boom Boom said to Peter excitedly. This way we can see the creatures in other universes. If they are villains, I mean they are bad guys who have been planning for a long time, I will help you deal with them. If they are a race with ulterior motives, I will help you, Dad, capture them all and bring them to the farm, and let these alien Zerg work for us. Peter fell silent after hearing what Boom Boom said. It turns out that his daughter, Runaway Lolly, is the biggest villain in the universe. After coaxing Bombshell and Way to sleep, Peter left their room and walked towards his own room. Just as he entered the room to rest, Raven knocked on the door again. Dad, Raven, who was getting taller and taller, gradually became slender and slim, with purple short hair. The girl, dressed in a gray and white sweater with plaid pajamas, knocked on his door with a lot of thoughts. Dad, why did you stop me from continuing? That Zerg creature called Nerzo was obviously lying, at least he concealed a lot of things. Raven faced Peter and told him her previous confusion. She didn't quite understand why her father stopped her just now. You're right, Raven, he wants us, especially Mark, to go to their planet, and the purpose may not be just to save him. Then why didn't you force him to tell her his purpose, Dad? Raven asked Peter in confusion. Peter looked at Raven's confused eyes, organized his words, and said to her, his purpose is not to save, but I believe that this journey may be a good training for you, especially for Mark. Raven listened to Peter's words, although she didn't quite understand, but still nodded. Then she asked Peter, what is it about? Dad, about superpowers and the troubles of growing up. Peter cast his eyes to the dark night outside the window and said to his daughter, in fact, in a parallel world, there is also a person named Mark, who is not my son there. Mark in the parallel world. Raven blinked. Well, Mark in the parallel world is an ordinary teenager, and his father is the most powerful superhero on the planet, Omniman. Shortly after his 17th birthday, Mark began to develop the superpowers he inherited from his father and accepted his father's guidance. He has the same super strength, speed, and flying ability as his father. He is invulnerable to swords and guns, ages slowly, and has strong self-healing ability. Peter slowly told Raven the story of the invincible young man Mark in the original world line. One day, the group of superheroes protecting that world, the Global Defense Force, received a call from the headquarters. After all the members arrived, they were attacked and all 7 superheroes were killed, and the attacker was Mark's father, Omni-Man. Peter slowly said to Raven, behind all this, it comes from the fact that Mark's father came to Earth not to protect peace, but to turn Earth into a colony of Vitrum. However, because life on Earth was too comfortable, Mark's father met Mark's mother, so Mark was born and Mark's father pretended to be a messenger of justice for a while. Listening to her father's story about Omni-Man becoming a villain, Raven widened her eyes in surprise. What choice did Mark in the other world make in the end, Dad? Did he follow Omni-Man? Raven asked Peter curiously. No, he chose to break up with his father. Peter shrugged his shoulders and said to her, then they fought to the death. Although Mark lost miserably in the end, he won in the end. Mark turned against his father in order to protect the home he believed in. His father, the Omniman, finally had trembling hands and left the Earth in tears without completing the mission. In terms of love, he won in the end. Raven fell into deep thought after listening to it. After a while, she asked Peter, Dad, did the Omniman finally not have the heart to kill him? Does he love Mark? I don't know if he let him go in the end, but he definitely loves his son in his own way. After listening to Peter's story, Raven's mood became complicated. Anyway, Dad, our Mark will not be the same as the other Mark. He will not oppose you, and I believe that no matter what happens, Mark will stand by you. Raven comforted Peter. In addition, if I meet the superhuman called the Omniman, I will defeat him. She had guessed that in the next adventure to the planet Sexa, her group would definitely meet the Omniman. Dad, how strong is the Omniman in the other world we are going to? Raven asked curiously. Peter thought for a moment and said to Raven, it shouldn't be a problem for him to deal with Zoo. Raven, she didn't know whether her father was praising Zoo or insulting him. The next day, Peter took his family on Nerzo's plane and went to the parallel world of Sexa planet with him. In order to take care of the farm, Peter called the female fox McBee to the farm and asked her to be the farmer for a while. Standing in the spaceship full of high-tech equipment and instruments of unknown use, Zoo's expression was a little surprised. He didn't expect that the technology of the Mantis people would be so advanced. Such advanced technology can't deal with meteor showers? How long will it take us to reach your planet? Zoo asked Nerzo, who was driving the spaceship. About 1 Earth day. Don't worry, we will be there soon. The spaceship made a space jump in Zoo's suspicion. After a period of space jump that made him a little uncomfortable, the spaceship appeared in an unfamiliar universe star field. After a day of driving, the final destination appeared in everyone's sight. "We have arrived at the planet Sexa," Nerzo pointed to the huge blue planet in front of him and said to Peter, Azu and others. Chapter 642 The meeting between the invincible young hero and the almighty hero. "Is this the planet Sexa?" Mark asked the Mantis Man standing in front of him in surprise. "Yes, this is Sexa, welcome, Mark." Mark got off the spaceship nervously. The existence that came into his sight made him stop completely. The dense crowd of Sexa people stood in front of him, showing him friendly smiles. "Hi, hello," Mark greeted everyone awkwardly. He had never encountered a scene where so many people lined up to welcome him. Mark, wearing a blue and black uniform, adjusted his glasses. A day ago, he was still happily playing games with his friends in the university dormitory. 2 days ago, he was reporting to Cecil Stedman, the government superhero handler. Stedman's requirements for him were almost nitpicking. He expected him to answer every call and strictly abide by his every order, as if he was just a chess piece in his hands. Another important responsibility of Stedman is to manage the Global Guardians, a young Avengers-style team, of which he is also a member. However, as the rude and powerful new captain, the Immortal Man, took office, Mark's dislike for the Immortal Man gradually overwhelmed the Commissioner Cecil Stedman. Whether it is Cecil Stedman or the Immortal Man, in short, these two are guys he hates. The most painful thing is that he has to work under the leadership of these two people. Looking at the many Mantis people in front of him, Mark's mind was full of random thoughts about his life a year ago. A year ago, as Mark's power gradually awakened, he learned combat skills under the strict guidance of his father. His father was ruthless in his training, and the criticism was endless. Under his father's fists and feet, Mark felt both fear and awe of this mentor. Then there was the battle with his father. Father Almighty Man did not finally kill him, but chose to leave the earth. But Mark did not feel relieved in the year after his father left. The influence of his father on Mark's heart became heavier. In the absence of his father, the pressure and constraints Mark endured seemed to become heavier, and his inner world became more depressed. No. This is not what I should think about now. Mark quickly pulled his thoughts out of his past memories. I must cheer up now. These sexes are waiting for me to save them. Mark kept taking deep breaths and suggested to himself that he should cheer up. Looking at the surrounding buildings, Mark thought of what happened a day ago. A day ago, a guy who claimed to be a sexist entered his university dormitory and said that his planet, Sexus, was hit by a meteorite shower and needed his help. So Mark followed a Mantis Man to this planet despite Cecil Stedman's opposition. Just like his mother said, his greatest strength is not having power beyond ordinary people, but having a firm and brave heart. When facing challenges and difficulties, he never backed down, chose to face them bravely, and used his own strength to protect those who needed him. This is what he should do most. Don't worry about them. Our Supreme Ruler wants to see you. Come on, follow me. The Mantis Man who brought Mark to this planet led the way for Mark. Wait, there is one thing I don't understand. Mark looked up at the various high-tech buildings and asked the Mantis Man, why does this planet need to be rescued? Where is the meteor shower? This planet doesn't look like it has suffered a disaster at all. He began to suspect that the Mantis Man who brought him here was deceiving his feelings. Meteor? What meteor? The Mantis Man walking in front asked casually. Mark immediately stopped and looked at him suspiciously. It was you who said that the entire planet's population needed to be saved, so I followed you here, right? The meteor that killed billions of Zerg, didn't you say that? Mark asked the other party with a serious expression. Oh, yes, those meteors. The Mantis Man scratched his head and made an embarrassed expression. I'm sorry, Mark, I must have Alzheimer's disease, that's why I forget things so easily recently. You know, we age much faster than you do, the Mantis Man said to him awkwardly. Mark clenched his fists. Taking a deep breath, Mark calmed himself down. Seeing Mark's expression of wanting to go berserk, the Mantis Man smiled awkwardly and quickly explained, Don't worry, our Supreme Ruler will explain everything. As they spoke, the two came to the magnificent palace complex. Looking at the fountain and the jade-stacked stairs in front of him, Mark adjusted his glasses with his hands and looked at the ethnic-style buildings that made him dazzled. At the top of the stairs, there were several female Mantis Men who looked extraordinary. Please allow me to introduce you, this is our Supreme Ruler, Hearing the words of several mantis man, Mark, who mistakenly thought that the female mantis man at the top of the stairs was the supreme ruler, quickly lowered his head and put his hands on his chest to salute the other party. Unexpectedly, the female mantis at the top of the stairs slowly retreated, and a figure walked out from behind the throne. "Hello, son." Hearing the familiar voice, Mark's heart was shocked. He looked up with a look of astonishment, and saw his father, the Almighty Man, standing in front of him. He had not seen him for a long time. Wearing a red and white tights, with a cape whistling in the wind behind him, the Almighty Man, Nolan, who looked similar to J.J. Jameson, the boss of the Daily Bugle in the Spider-Man series, stood on the stairs in front of the throne, staring at Mark. "Long time no see, Mark, Dad." Mark looked at his father in disbelief. His father, who had been missing for a year, turned out to be the supreme ruler of the planet Sexa. Mark was immediately stunned. A few minutes later, in the Sexa Palace, Mark clenched his fists and looked at the Almighty Man indignantly. He took off the mask on his head and walked quickly towards the Almighty Man. Mark, with his fists tightly clenched, stood in front of the Omni-Man, about to punch him. The Mantis Man around him also noticed what Mark was doing. The Mantis Man cast his eyes on the two, ready to stop Mark if anything went wrong. The Omni-Man clenched his fists and looked at his son who was walking towards him. Mark walked in front of the Omni-Man, clenched his fists and looked at him. The two men confronted each other. The atmosphere was tense, and when a conflict was about to occur, Mark suddenly loosened his fists, and his expression softened in an instant. With a bang, he hugged his father tightly. "I miss you so much, Dad." The Omni-Man was stunned for a moment, but he didn't expect to be greeted by Mark's hug instead of a fist. He was slightly stunned for a moment, then gently hugged Mark with his hands and whispered, "Me too, my son, I miss you so much." After a while, "So, you brought me here." After the hug, Mark asked the Omni-Man, "Did you give the order to the Sexes?" The Omni-Man nodded. "I did." Mark asked him puzzledly, "But the Sexes said they need help." The Omni-Man looked at the female mantis in the distance with a serious expression, and after a few seconds of silence, he said, "Yes, they do need your help, Mark, but why?" Mark was even more confused. Obviously, his father's power is stronger than his. Why do the people here need his help? What his father couldn't do, can he do it himself? The Omni-Man shook his head and said to Mark, "The situation is complicated, come with me." He was interrupted by Mark before he finished speaking. Mark, who felt that he had been deceived, became emotional. "No, why did you lie to me again?" Mark clenched his fists and glared at the other party. "Why do you think I want to see you again? You killed thousands of people. You said my mother was your pet. You said you just used us as tools, you know? Sometimes I would rather be the ordinary cowboy in my dream, living on the farm and never being tortured by these things, like the people in the black robe world." Mark often dreams of life on Patrick's farm. He dreams of living a carefree life on the farm, and his father is no longer the one who wants to conquer the earth, but protects his family and the earth with his own help. There is no confusion about the identity of a hero on the future, and no pain for his father killing innocent people. What he remembers most is that he did not become a superhero in his dream, awakening his super strength and super speed, but became a wizard after receiving a letter from an owl. "I need your help, Mark." The all-powerful man tried to calm the excited Mark. "Listen to me, this time things are complicated, and I need you know, you can't lie to me this time," Mark said angrily and turned away. The Almighty Man looked at Mark who was about to leave, and said to him from behind, "Mark, I made a mistake, and I have thought about it every day since then." Mark stopped, turned around and looked at him. "A mistake, son? You are not qualified to call me son. Then what do you want me to say to you?" Mark exhaled and spread his hands. "At least say sorry." "Well, even if you say sorry, it's useless. The mistakes and killings you have made can never be made up. Thousands of people on Earth have been killed by you just because of your ridiculous reasons." Mark shook his head at him. "Those people, the dead people, will not let me forgive you. Go to hell." Chapter 643. Why are there two Marks? After threatening to the Omni-Man, Mark turned and flew towards the sky. "Mark, you can't fly back by your own strength," the Omni-Man below shouted at him. Mark looked down and said, "Just wait and see, Mark. This place is 108,000 miles away from the Earth, and you don't know the way. I know you don't have a strong sense of direction." The Omni-Man was still trying to persuade Mark to change his mind, and continued to shout at him. "Come back, please, Mark, I need you." Listening to the increasingly faint voice behind him, Mark gritted his teeth and didn't let the other person's voice reach his ears. Boom! The air made a sonic boom, and Mark quickly left his father's voice behind and flew out of the atmosphere. As he continued to accelerate, he flew into outer space in an instant. Standing in outer space, looking down at the blue planet, Mark felt sad. He lied. His feelings for his father were not all hatred. In fact, he wanted to go back and reunite with his father. During his father's absence, his life was not good. He and his mother Debbie began to drift apart. His mother Debbie endured her husband's brutality and endless loneliness, and sought temporary comfort in alcohol. He took on the responsibility of correcting his father's mistakes, facing external threats and challenges, and also facing his own inner struggles and pain. His college life was also full of challenges. He not only had to deal with his girlfriend Amber, but also with his best friend William and his super friend Adam Girleave. He needed to find a balance between academics, friendship and love. He wanted to stick to his beliefs, but it was not easy. He tried not to be defeated by the difficulties, put on the iconic yellow and blue uniform, and face everything bravely. Driven by anger and sadness, he longed to become stronger. But all this could not cover up his feelings for his father. Sometimes, he longed for his father's help, just like before. No, I can't think like this. I can't forgive him, because I'm an earthling. Mark clenched his fists and said to himself painfully. He thought of the final battle a year ago, the decisive battle with his father. The Almighty used the way he slaughtered the villains and the guards to treat his son Mark twice. Mark, who hated evil, softened his heart in front of his father, and his fists began to become soft and powerless. As a result, the Almighty crushed the head of the pilot who Mark had just saved, and then grabbed his body and smashed a train of people. Blood splattered on his face, and the screams of countless people rang in his ears. His spirit almost collapsed at this moment. Watching these innocent people helplessly being smashed into pieces by himself in front of him, is there anything more painful than this? Why do you want me to do this? You are fighting, so you can watch everyone around you die. Think about it, Mark. You will live longer than every fragile and insignificant person on this planet, and you will live to see this world turn to dust and blown away by the wind. Everyone and everything you know will disappear. What will you have in 500 years? Remembering what his father roared to him in that battle, Mark closed his eyes in pain. After a while, after looking at the planet Sexa, Mark turned and flew away. Yes, I have lived longer and been stronger than anyone on Earth, so I have to protect them. Mark, who was flying into space, suddenly thought of the time when he was lying in the hospital after the final battle with his father, and the alien civil servant asked him what he wanted to do next. At that time, he recalled the montage of each villain and the scenes of his family and friends in his mind. After a long pause, he answered, "Finish high school first." In this year, he finished his high school life, entered college, and grew up a lot. After a year of growth, he learned how to balance his dual identity and how to use his own strength. Now, he will never follow in his father's footsteps. He will treat these living lives that have made him who he is in his own way. He will never be with his father. Mark, who swore in his heart, soon realized something very important. That is, he was really lost. Although his sense of direction is indeed not very good, he would not get lost so quickly, right? Mark, who was hurt in his heart, stopped and scratched his hair. After identifying the direction, it was useless for him to continue flying forward according to his feelings. After flying for a while, Mark had to admit in frustration that he was indeed lost. Well, maybe I shouldn't have left so directly at the beginning. I should have asked the locals to take me away from here. My sense of direction is indeed a bit bad, Mark complained while floating in the air and observing the surrounding situation. In the vast and dark universe, there was nothing he could observe at all. Just when Mark was hesitating whether to go back to the planet Sexa to ask for a guide, a figure suddenly appeared behind him. "It seems you are lost," a strange voice suddenly appeared in his mind. This sentence was not transmitted by sound, but seemed to be transmitted directly into his mind and communicated with him in his spiritual world. Mark turned around in surprise and saw Peter standing behind him. A man with short black hair, a beard, and an extraordinary temperament stood in front of him. Seeing this father who appeared in his dream, Mark Grayson was stunned. He had always thought that it was just a dream, but he didn't expect to see it in reality. "Dad, no, I mean Mr. Pa. Mr. Patrick." Mark Grayson swallowed his saliva, feeling a little annoyed for saying the wrong thing. and wanted to give himself a slap in the face. But what surprised him was that what he wanted to say seemed to be transmitted directly into Peter's spiritual world. As for why the two communicated like this, it was because Peter used the ruby. With a ruby, he could communicate with the other party without using sound. It seems that you know me, Mark, Peter smiled at the other party. Before Nerzo docked the spacecraft in outer space, Peter and others saw a figure flying out before entering the planet. Peter, who felt that this figure was somewhat familiar, asked Raven and others to wait for him, and then he left the spacecraft and flew towards the familiar figure. After discovering that the other party was lost and kept going around in circles, Peter finally decided not to hide himself anymore and stood up. He was afraid that he would also get lost by this guy. As for why the other party knew him, Peter suspected that Mark in the world of the invincible young hero, like Azu from the Black Robe Pickets, often dreamed of himself in another parallel world because of mutual interference and influence. Peter had a good impression of Mark in the original world line. This kid insisted on his original goal and the concept of pursuing a righteous superhero, never backing off, and refused to compromise even with his own father. Although he was also a father-worried person, he was definitely a father-worried person with the most correct values. Mr. Padrick, you also know my name. Are you really my father in the parallel world? I mean, there really are parallel worlds? Mark Grayson asked Peter in shock. He didn't expect Peter to know him. Yes, I know you. My son is also called Mark like you. You look very similar. I may be your father in the parallel world. Peter stretched out his hand to Mark, who was squatting in the air, and pulled him up. It seems that you have encountered some troubles, Mark. Peter looked at the kid and asked Mark in the world of the invincible young hero who was pulled up by him. Mark Grayson nodded. Yes, I'm lost, Mr. Padrick. Although he wanted to ask Peter how he knew him, he didn't have the courage to ask in the end. In his few but vivid memories, Peter seemed to be a strict father. No, you seem to be lost not only in space, but also in life, Peter said, something that stunned Mark Grayson. You seem to be standing at a crossroads in life, confused and uneasy about the direction of the future, and have to face the uncertainty in front of you. Your superpowers are extremely powerful. It is both the source of your confidence and the source of your fear. You have always wanted to prove that you can control this power. Peter smiled slightly, looked at the stunned Mark, and continued, you feel that you are facing a challenge. This challenge is not only related to your personal destiny, but will also deeply affect your family. Every decision and every action will have unpredictable consequences, spreading like ripples to every corner of the world. After listening to Peter's words, Mark Grayson suddenly felt touched. Mr. Padrick not only knows his own name, but also knows his own heart. Thank you, Mr. Padrick, he said to Peter. I am indeed lost, not only in the universe, but also in life. Sir, how did you know? I always know what I want to know, Mark. Half an hour later. Inside the Nerzo spaceship, Raven and her companions were shocked to see Mark Grayson, who looked almost the same as Mark, but was slightly taller and a few years younger. After seeing this scene, Azu and Clark looked at each other in bewilderment. What is this? Mark from another parallel universe? Just like Azu in the Black Robe world and Clark in the Injustice world? Mark stared at another self blankly, and asked Peter hesitantly, Dad, who is he? He is another you in this universe. Chapter 644 Tom's ambition, transformed into Orochimaru. Another me. Mark was stunned as he looked at another Mark who looked like him. Although he had dreamed about another me before, he always thought it was a dream. An ordinary dream of a different life. Now he didn't expect that the dream would come true and another me appeared. Mark Grayson from the invincible young hero's world was also shocked when he saw Mark. Is this his counterpart? A wizard waving a magic wand who has never been to high school. The two looked at each other with disbelief in their eyes. Bao, who was acting as a spectator, saw two Marks appear in front of him. After a long pause, he whispered to Wei, that's good. Dad has two sons from one. Hearing Bao's complaints, Wei whispered to her to silence her. Although Bao's voice was very low, it was finally caught by Peter's ears. Peter moved his ears, pretending not to hear, and said to Mark, Mark, you can introduce everyone to him? He asked Mark to introduce everyone to Mark Grayson in this world. Okay, Dad. Although it was a bit strange to face another self, Mark nodded obediently and began to introduce Azu, Clark, Raven and others to each other. Nerzo, come with me. Peter called Nerzo, who was still in a daze, to the lounge of the spaceship. in the lounge. "Don't you have anything to say to me, Nerzo?" Peter looked at the mantis man with an unnatural expression and asked him, "You said you asked for help from Mark in the parallel world, but now Mark in your universe has appeared. Don't tell me that you plan to invite all Marks in the parallel universe to the planet Sexa. No, this is just some accidents." Nerzo showed an embarrassed expression. "Actually, I don't know what happened, really." Peter naturally didn't believe what this guy said, so he pretended to sigh slightly. "In that case, I'll let Raven come and ask you. She can find out what happened from you. She has always doubted your intentions, and Raven's spiritual perception is extremely strong. Maybe she can make you change your mind." Hearing that Peter wanted Raven to interrogate him, Nerzo surrendered immediately. He heard Mark say that Raven had a trick that could enter the body of another person in the form of a soul, thereby achieving the purpose of controlling others. Although Nerzo was skeptical about whether Raven could really do this, he knew that Raven's eyes looking at him were full of suspicion and bad intentions. If Raven came to interrogate him, who knows what she would do. "No, please, Mr. Patrick, don't do that." Nerzo immediately begged Peter for mercy. "I will tell you the information I know, everything I know." Peter nodded after hearing this, including the fact that Omniman became your leader, right? Hearing Peter say that Omniman was the leader of the people of the planet Sexa, Nerzo was slightly stunned. "Mr. Patrick, how did you know that?" Nerzo asked Peter in shock. "I always know what I want to know." Peter walked to the transparent bulkhead, looked at the vast space outside, and said to him, "Tell me, start with the almighty man I just mentioned. How did he become your leader? And did he give the order to bring Mark to this planet?" "Actually, Mr. Patrick," Nerzo said cautiously, "it was our supreme ruler who saved us, and we begged him to stay, so he became our emperor." After explaining to Peter the origins of the almighty man, he continued, "Our supreme ruler did ask me to find the invincible young man. But my spaceship encountered an accident." Peter's eyebrows moved when he heard this, and he asked him, "What accident?" "I traveled to your universe." Nerzo's face turned like bitter gourd when he said this. "My order is to bring the invincible young warrior Mark Grayson to the planet Sexa, but it takes 7 Earth days to restart the spacecraft to return to my universe, and another 6 Earth days to get from Sexa to Earth, which adds up to 13 Earth days. If I bring Mark back from our universe after 13 Earth days, it will be too late." "So you plan to bring Mark back to report, even if it is Mark from a different parallel universe?" Peter frowned and asked the other party. He didn't expect that this guy took the initiative to bring his group to the universe of the invincible young warrior. "Yes, I think Mr. Patrick, you and Mark, may really be able to help our supreme ruler, almighty man. He has encountered some unsolvable problems and he is saving our race." Nerzo pleaded with Peter, hoping that he could help almighty man. After hearing this, Peter did not agree immediately. Listening to the other party's words, he fell into deep thought. After a while, he asked the other party, "What trouble did the almighty man encounter?" Nerzo thought for a while and said, "I don't know the details, but I once heard the queen say that the enemy seems to be the Vitrum people, other Vitrum people. They want to destroy our planet. As for the reason, I have no way of knowing." Outside the lounge of the spaceship, Tom, who secretly heard the conversation between Peter and Nerzo in the room, narrowed his eyes. Using invisibility powder, he covered his figure so that Peter and Nerzo would not find him, and stepped back and left the corridor outside the lounge. "Almighty man Vitrum people." After repeating these 2 words, Tom's face showed a thoughtful look. "It seems that all Vitrum people are like Clark and Azu, with super speed and strength, and can fly in the air without the help of any tools. If he can get a Vitrum body for himself to study, perhaps he can study the secrets of the Superman." After becoming Peter's son, although Tom did not desire to find the secret of immortality due to fear of death like in his previous life, he perfectly inherited the wisdom and scheming that far surpassed his peers. Tom, who is mature beyond his years, was dark and scheming. In the original world line, he murdered his classmates and framed others when he was 15, and released the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets but was able to escape unscathed. After that, the original Tom Riddle was determined to stay dormant in the dense forests of Albania for 13 years. If it were someone else, even if he had not forgotten how to say English, he would have been mentally disturbed. But Riddle did not, and his self-control ability was also amazing. After 13 years of savage life, even worse than that, facing the gap from the clouds to the bottom of the valley, and the tragic situation of being completely betrayed by the Death Eaters who once followed his lead, he still maintained a calm mind and thinking ability. He was even able to manipulate Crouch Jr. to catch Harry through the complicated puzzle of the Triwizard Tournament, which really defeated Dumbledore. Now Tom Patrick's ambition, in addition to becoming the greatest wizard in the magic world, has another desire. That is to make the farm his own property. At least after his father is gone, he has to maintain strong competitiveness. After living on the farm for a long time, Tom has regarded Peter as his real father and the farm as his home. If he wants to have an advantage in future competition, he can't do it with his current magic power. At least when facing Azu and Clark, he can't defeat them. After all, these two supermen have super speed and super strength, which cannot be easily dealt with by magic. So Tom transformed into Orochimaru and wanted to use the magic knowledge he learned to study the corpses of superhumans to obtain the secret that can make him stronger. This ambition sounds too crazy, so Tom has kept the secret in his heart. He didn't even write it in his diary. Standing in the corridor, he frowned and thought for a moment, and felt that the one he should pay most attention to was his father. His father's eyes are sharper than Dumbledore's legitimacy. He feels that his father's eyes can always see through his heart. An hour later, the almighty man of the planet Sexa was immersed in the pain of Mark's departure. Suddenly, he heard his subordinates report to him, "Mark has returned." After hearing the news that his son had returned, the almighty man exhaled a breath of joy. Sure enough, Mark did not give up on his father in the end. "Mark, it's great, you are finally back." In the palace, the almighty man held Mark's hand. "Not for you, but for them." Mark shook his head and said to him. Looking at his son's serious face, the almighty man suddenly felt something was wrong. Why is the other party different from the Mark in his impression? Although the appearance is exactly the same, there is a difference in temperament. Although he was confused in his heart, he did not show it, but said to Mark, "Come on, I will introduce you." With that, the almighty man took Mark to the inside of the palace. Mark looked at the layout and furnishings around him, and his eyes showed surprise. Click, after an automatic door opened, a female mantis man walked over. The other party's clothes were obviously much more gorgeous than those of ordinary mantis men. The female mantis man holding the baby came over and gave the Omni-Man a wet kiss. Seeing the female mantis man sticking out her tongue, Mark wanted to cover his injured eyes. "What are you doing?" His eyes had no interest in the human beast. "Let me introduce you, this is Amber." The Omni-Man introduced a female mantis man to Mark, and then took the purple-skinned baby in Amber's arms. "This is your brother." Chapter 645, Almighty Man vs. Azu. "Well, I don't even know what to say," Mark asked with a strange expression. "So you married a new wife here and gave birth to a child?" "With a zerg, with a grasshopper, that's not the case, Mark." The Omniman handed the child to Amber and said to him, "The physiology of the sexes is different from ours." He walked slowly to the outside of the palace. "When I finished that battle and rushed to the outside of the earth, I felt very lost. Later, when I was wandering in the universe, I accidentally found these people. I saved them, and they wanted me to be the leader, which gave me a new goal in life. He is innocent, your brother is innocent." Soon the Omniman turned his eyes to the purple-skinned baby again and said slowly, "I don't understand, what do you mean by innocent?" Mark asked him puzzledly. The Omniman explained, "The Vitrum people's regulations on hybridization are not complicated. We are only allowed to reproduce with species with similar genes, such as humans. Look at you, Mark, you are almost a Vitrum in every aspect." He sighed and continued, "Now that the Vitrum people know that I have left the earth, they will follow me and will eventually find this earth. When they come, they will regard your brother as an inferior creature and kill him. I alone cannot resist them, but once we join forces, we can stop them." Mark nodded thoughtfully. "So you want me to save the child you had with another woman?" The Omniman said to him, "I know what I did on earth is unforgivable, but without our help, your brother will die." Mark looked at his father's sincere eyes, and after thinking for a moment, he asked him, "You said you hope I can help you, but what should I do? My strength is obviously not as strong as yours." The Omniman said that he had already considered this. "I will train you to become strong, and we will resist those enemies together." Mark nodded after hearing this, glanced at the Sexa star, and said hesitantly, "It sounds like a good idea, but I have to leave here to get something first." "Get something?" "Yes, something that is very important to me. Just give me 2 minutes, Mark said as he walked quickly outside. Seeing Mark's hurriedly leaving, the expression of the Almighty Man became serious. "Hey, Mark, catch it." The Almighty Man threw the cup he had just picked up to Mark. Just like the baseball game that father and son used to play together, Mark could always catch the baseball thrown from behind. After that, Mark awakened his superpowers, and it was even easier for him to catch the objects thrown from behind. Unexpectedly, this time Mark did not subconsciously turn around to catch the thrown object after hearing his name behind him, but dodged to the side after hearing the voice. "You are not Mark, who are you?" Seeing Mark's actions, the Almighty Man immediately realized that the other party was not his son. It is impossible for his son to hear someone calling his name behind him and remain indifferent. This is not in line with Mark's personality traits. He frowned, clenched his fists, and looked at the other party with unfriendly eyes. From the beginning, he noticed that something was wrong with Mark. Now he finally confirmed that the other party was a fake Mark. "Okay," Mark turned around and smiled at him, "it seems that my luck is not very good. You found out so quickly." As he spoke, a green flash passed through the surface of Mark's body. Then the figure of the young Loki appeared in front of him. The Omni-Man looked at Loki, who had returned to his original state after being transformed by Mark, and was stunned. He didn't expect that the real identity of Mark, who had talked to him before, was actually the long-haired young man in front of him. Being stared at by the dangerous eyes of the Omni-Man, Loki felt that he was a little unlucky. After listening to the story of the invincible young man in this world and the relationship with his father, Loki decided to come and see this so-called Omni-Man and the planet Sexa in person. Of course, if pretending to be the invincible young man can get something else in addition to information, this result is even better. Loki's mischievous and adventurous character drove him to use illusion to turn into Mark's appearance. So Loki pretended to be Mark and got a lot of useful information from the Omni-Man. But the last step was not held tight, revealing a flaw, resulting in failure. He originally wanted to disguise himself as Mark Grayson, take away some valuable items from the planet Sexa, and then give them to his father. "Who are you?" The Omni-Man frowned and asked Loki. "I am Loki, the god of mischief, the god of tricks, the god of cunning, the god of stories, the shapeshifter, the air traveler, the son of Patrick, the heir to Patrick's farm, the heir to the throne of Asgard." Loki said a series of his own names. "Where is Mark?" The Omni-Man ignored the meaning of Loki's long list of names and asked him impolitely, "Do you know where Mark is?" He suspected that Mark was in Loki's hands, so he did not act immediately. "Sorry, no comment." Loki shrugged his shoulders, indicating that he didn't know where Mark was. Seeing that Loki didn't seem to want to cooperate, the Omni-Man didn't waste any more time talking to him. With a bang, he crushed the ground with his feet and flew towards Loki. Loki, who had already made a retreat plan, saw the Omni-Man flying towards him, and immediately used the Peruvian invisibility smoke bomb he bought at the Hogwarts Wizarding World. The Peruvian invisibility smoke bomb, also known as the Peruvian invisibility smoke bomb, is a magic prop used for cover or escape. When it is thrown out, the surroundings will become pitch black, and even spells such as fluorescent flashing or flaming cannot penetrate the darkness. With the release of the Peruvian invisibility smoke bomb, there was a bang in the air, and black smoke immediately surrounded the space. The Omni-Man's vision was blocked for a moment. When he rushed into the smoke, he found that Loki had disappeared. "Do you think you can get away?" the Omni-Man roared, completely enraged by Loki's series of actions. After roaring, he suddenly flew into the air. After rushing into outer space at the fastest speed he could achieve, the Omni-Man looked into the universe, searching for Loki's figure. He roughly felt that Loki had escaped here. After searching for a while, a spaceship of the Sexa people came into his sight. In his sight, he saw Loki directly enter the spaceship. The Omni-Man, who was aroused with anger, adjusted his body shape and accelerated to fly towards the spaceship. Just when he was about to smash the spaceship to pieces, a figure suddenly appeared in front of the spaceship's bulkhead. Azu, who was wearing a red and blue uniform and a star-spangled cloak on his back, suddenly activated his super speed and knocked the Omni-Man out heavily before he collided with the spaceship. The Omni-Man, who was unable to react in time, was knocked directly from space to the ground. With a deafening boom sound, the Almighty Man knocked a big hole in the ground, and the smoke and dust scattered everywhere. The loud noise from the ground attracted the attention of the people of Sexa. When they saw that the person knocked down from space was the Almighty Man, the people of Sexa showed an incredible expression on their faces. Under the gaze of the people of Sexa, Azu, wearing a Homelander uniform and a whirring cape behind him, slowly fell from the sky to the ground. He was in the spaceship and originally wanted to come out to fly in the universe and experience this world. Unexpectedly, he saw the Almighty Man crashing into his spaceship as soon as he came out. After listening to Mark in this world telling about the deeds of the Almighty Man, Azu had a very bad impression of this guy. He didn't know the whole story, so he didn't hesitate and attacked the Almighty Man directly. After knocking the opponent from the air to the ground, Azu flew to the surface of Sexa. Looking at the Almighty Man who was knocked down by him on the ground, Azu showed a contemptuous smile at the corner of his mouth. You want to be the god of these Zerg? Obviously you can't do it, because my father and I are gods. Azu exuded a powerful aura, standing in front of the fallen Omniman, and slowly said to him. But before he could enjoy the shocked and unbelievable gaze of the Sexa people, he was suddenly knocked away by the Almighty Man. The ground began to rumble, and a bang sounded. Azu's body was somewhat out of control. While being knocked away, he felt that the ground that seemed to make a rumbling sound fell under him. When the ground fell, a red and white uniform that seemed to be stained with blood flew over, grabbed Azu's body, and quickly threw him out of the falling ground. With a loud bang, Azu's body crashed through a corridor building. After knocking Azu out, the Almighty Man tried to fly up and continue to attack Azu. But Azu's ability to withstand blows was not to be underestimated. With rich combat experience and having been beaten many times, he quickly stood up from the ground. With heat rays shooting out of his eyes, Zu hit Omni-Man, knocking him to the ground, plowing a deep pit and rolling out. What's wrong? God of grasshoppers, can't you stand the power of America? After Zu knocked Omni-Man out, a smug look appeared on his face, and he sneered at Omni-Man. This guy is said to be the most powerful guy in the world. Now I have to defeat him and prove to my father who is the real strong one. Who is qualified to be called a god? The angry Omni-Man stood up from the ground, flew off the ground, and tried to attack Zu again. Zizzy, Zu shot out a heat ray that burned the air, hitting Omni-Man in the face and knocking him to the ground. Chapter 646, Rebellious Mark, Who is the Father? The Omni-Man was hit hard by Zu's heat vision and flew away. He fell to the ground with a look of astonishment and disbelief on his face. You are from Vitrum. He thought Zu was sent by the Vitrum to attack him. But he had never heard of Vitrum people with laser eyes. No, I am from my motherland, the son of Peter Patrick. Zu shook his head, pinched his waist with an unhappy expression and said to him, let me tell you, the god flying in the sky is not you, it can only be my father, or me. You are not the god. I am. As soon as the voice fell, Zu's heat vision shot towards the Omniman again. The Omniman dodged Zu's heat vision attack, but the next second, with a boom, Zu, who moved at super speed, punched him away. The Omniman, who was knocked away, endured the pain and quickly adjusted his body shape in the air. Bang! The fists of the two people collided with each other, making a bursting sound of air vibration. Both parties were directly blown away by this force. Before the Omni-Man landed, Zu stomped the ground with his feet until it cracked, and rushed towards the other side. Boom! The palace building of the planet Sexa roared like thunder, and the two superhumans started a fierce battle. Zu and the Omni-Man's bodies were almost like lightning, and they could not be seen at all. The people of Sexa only saw the buildings falling down and the dust on the ground rising up. The air was squeezed into a hurricane, and it kept surging in all directions, as if trying to escape from this fierce battlefield. The aftermath of the battle between the two superhumans destroyed the ground and buildings of the battlefield. The floor of the palace building was lifted up by more than 10 centimeters, and broken stones and oil were splashed everywhere. With a bang, Zu hit the chin of the Omni-Man and knocked him back heavily. The Omni-Man broke all the obstacles on the flying route, whether it was a wall or a towering high-tech building, and the boom sound shook everyone's eardrums like an earthquake. With the upper hand, Zu once again caught up with the Omniman, and with all his strength, he seemed to want to smash the face of this hideous guy with one punch. Bang! The Omniman was hit to the ground again, leaving a big crater. Bang! Zu flew over and landed on the ground with a slight breath. He stretched out one leg and landed on the opponent's chest to pin the Omniman down. The Omniman was stepped on by Zu's chest. He gritted his teeth and reached out to grab Zu's legs and slowly lifted them up. Seeing that the Omniman was about to break free from his step, Zu kicked the opponent's arm and let the Omniman's arm hit his face. I know people have a strange way to motivate themselves or others, but I didn't expect you to be like this, Zu said in a sarcastic tone. Unexpectedly, as soon as Zu finished his mocking words, he was grabbed by the Omniman's leg and thrown out with a roar. With a bang, Zhu was thrown on the hard floor, making a bang sound. As the floor was smashed to pieces, dust flew everywhere. Omni-Man panted slightly and looked at Zhu, who was knocked to the ground by him. Zhu stood up from the ground and looked at him with gritted teeth. With a whoosh he activated his super speed. Omni-Man flew towards Zhu in an instant and punched him in the face. Zhu endured the pain brought by Omni-Man's fist, grabbed both sides of the opponent's head and hit him hard with his head. Omni-Man fell backwards to the ground after being hit by Zhu's headbutt. This move is like playing college ball, you know? I want to try the University of Texas, but I'm not sure if I can join. If I hadn't inherited my father's farm, I could have become a professional player, but I'm not one of those fancy dressed guys. Although I can't become a professional player, I can break you in half with my bare hands. Just like breaking those balls, Zhu said fiercely while walking towards Omni-Man, who was lying on the ground. Omni-Man, who has strong recovery and healing abilities, slowly stood up and touched his forehead where he was hit. Very good, my countrymen, you have succeeded in provoking my anger. The Omni-Man, who had been defeated repeatedly, wiped the dirt off his forehead, his face full of gloom. Boom, the Omni-Man rushed straight into the sky like a meteor, and the sound of the sonic boom that cut through the air spread all around. As the speed of the Omni-Man increased suddenly, Zhu, who was unable to react in time, was hit hard and then flew sideways in the air. The Omni-Man increased his flying speed, grabbed Zhu's battlesuit in the air with his right hand, and threw it into the sky with force. With a boom sound, Zhu was thrown into the sky like a baseball. The Omni-Man chased him to the sky, gritted his teeth and punched again. With a precise and powerful punch, Zhu was knocked down from the air to the ground. Boom! After his body smashed a wall of the palace, Zhu continued to rush out along the ground. The Omni-Man pursued and caught up with Zhu, grabbed his cape, gathered his powerful legs, and kicked Zhu's abdomen hard, blasting him further away. Boom! A huge sound rang out, and Zhu's body hit the ground of the Sexa Palace like a meteorite, forming a huge pit. Countless gravel and soil scattered into the sky, as if a heavy rain had fallen. Panting slightly, wiping the blood off his face, the Omni-Man looked at the dusty ground, stepped on the bumpy ground, and walked towards Zhu. Boom! The next moment, the air exploded, and the sound of a sonic boom came from above. The Omni-Man stopped, frowned, and looked up. Clark fell from the air to the ground, and with a loud bang, he fell in front of the Omni-Man and blocked his body. Stand back. Omni-Man. Clark looked at Omni-Man with an unfriendly look. If you take another step forward, I will not make sure you will not be attacked. Looking at Clark, who suddenly appeared, Omni-Man's face showed a look of surprise. Who are you, Clark? Patrick Kent. Clark's eyes flashed with anger. Although his relationship with Zhu was a little strained because of the farm issue, Clark was still furious when he saw Zhu being beaten so badly by Omni-Man. What is your relationship with Homelander? Why are all the people you met today superhuman? Omni-Man did not attack Clark immediately, but frowned and asked him. He is my brother. Omni-Man sneered. Very good, now you can die together. As soon as the voice fell, Omni-Man's body turned into a flash of lightning and rushed towards Clark. Clark reacted and grabbed the fist of Omni-Man, who rushed over. After learning to fly, Clark's strength has improved by leaps and bounds. He found that things that he couldn't do before, he could do easily now. Whether it was strength or speed, he had explosive growth. He was now even confident that he could easily beat Zhu, even if the opponent held a trident. Now facing the injured Omni-Man, Clark used his speed advantage to block the opponent's attack. Omni-Man saw that his fist was held by Clark, and looked at Clark in disbelief. Bang! Then Clark threw a punch, hitting Omni-Man's face hard, knocking him back. On the other side, Zhu also got up from the pit. Seeing that Omni-Man was knocked away by Clark's punch, Zhu wiped the dust on his face, walked over and said to Clark with some dissatisfaction, "You shouldn't have taken action, Clark. I knocked this guy down right away. This guy is not my opponent. Maybe, I don't want to interrupt your fight. It was the Godfather who asked me to come to help you." Clark said that it was the Godfather's idea that he came to join the fight. Dad, after hearing Clark's words, Zhu immediately felt guilty. Could it be that his father had seen all his embarrassing behavior just now? After being knocked away by Clark's punch, the Omni-Man staggered to his feet. He was in pain all over, his uniform was tattered, and blood was flowing from his nose. He wiped the dirt and blood mixture on his face and looked at the spaceship slowly landing in front of him in shock. In his stunned eyes, a group of people slowly walked out of the spaceship. His son Mark also walked out of the spaceship. What was going on? Why did Mark come out of the spaceship? In his unbelievable eyes, he saw another Mark who looked like his son. Was he dazzled? Just when the Omni-Man was doubting his life, Peter had already walked in front of him. After looking at the embarrassed Omni-Man, Peter stretched out his hand to him. Hello, Omni-Man. The two Marks stood behind Peter and looked at him with complicated expressions, especially Mark Grayson in this world. Seeing his father's miserable appearance after being beaten up by Azu and Clark, he was shocked by the strength and speed shown by the two men that were not inferior to him, and he felt sorry for his father. Seeing Peter's outstretched hand, the Omni-Man looked at Mark Grayson standing behind Peter warily and asked, "Do you know me?" Of course, the name of the Omni-Man is very famous in the universe. I am Peter Patrick, from another parallel universe. You can think of me as the father of the invincible young man from another parallel universe. As Peter spoke, he looked at the uneasy Azu and the calm Clark. Sorry, my sons may have some misunderstandings with you. Misunderstanding? The Omni-Man sneered. This is not a misunderstanding. As he said that, he looked at Mark Grayson behind Peter. Mark, come over here and tell me what happened. He asked Mark to stand over. However, to his surprise, Mark Grayson actually hesitated. Standing behind Peter, his steps did not move. Mark. Chapter 647 Mark, I choose the new dad. Mark, Omni-Man tried to call Mark Grayson again. Seeing Mark who seemed to prefer to stay in front of another father in a parallel universe whom he didn't know, rather than stand in front of himself, Omni-Man's face was a little ugly. Could it be that the guy in another parallel universe who claimed to be the father of the invincible young hero was more worthy of Mark's trust than himself? Mark, don't you want to stand by your father? You know, I need your help. Omni-Man frowned and took a step closer to him. Don't you want to fight side by side with me? No, my mother and I have nothing to do with you anymore. We are very happy without you. Although Mark Grayson was a little hesitant, he still said this to his nominal father. Although it was a bit heartless to say so, it was all the other party's own fault. From the beginning, this was the mistake made by Omni-Man. Omni-Man, his nominal father, slaughtered the superheroes on Earth and left, leaving the mess to his mother who was crying all day and gradually collapsed mentally. All of this was the fault of his irresponsible father. I once apologized to you, Mark. Without your help, your brother would have encountered an enemy that he could not resist, and they would have all died. No, it's not me, it's you. You led them to their death, and you caused all this. Mark refused to be morally blackmailed, and angrily said to the Almighty Man, if you hadn't married a woman on this planet, none of this would have happened. After speaking to the Almighty Man, Mark took a deep breath and walked to Peter's side, choosing to stand with Peter. Now, I won't fight on the same team with you, because you don't deserve it. After hearing what Mark Grayson said, the Almighty Man frowned. He asked Mark, so this father of the invincible young hero in this parallel universe is more worthy of your trust than me? Yes. Mark Grayson glanced at Peter, nodded and said, Mr. Patrick is more worthy of my trust than you, because he is a better and more fatherly father. Peter, originally, he had been quietly watching the crowd, but he didn't expect to be dragged into it by Mark Grayson. This kid is probably trying to drag me down, and he definitely has bad intentions. At this time, Peter began to doubt Mark Grayson's ideology and morality. Is this still the righteous and invincible young man in the original world line? After hearing Mark Grayson's words, the Almighty Man really cast a bad look at Peter. He was ready to fight if he disagreed. Seeing that the Almighty Man seemed to be ready to attack her father, Raven began to condense magic elements in her left hand. She was ready to attack the Almighty Man if anything went wrong. Clark and Azu also looked at the Almighty Man with caution, ready to attack at any time. However, before Raven, Azu and others could attack the Almighty Man, there was a loud bang, and the satellite fragments falling from the sky were smashed into pieces and hit the ground. The huge noise and the dust raised from the ground scared the Sexer people near the crash site, and they screamed in fear and fled in all directions. Seeing this chaotic scene, the Almighty Man didn't care about his own son recognizing someone else as his father. He immediately called his soldiers nearby and ordered them to take Ember out. What happened? Looking at the chaotic scene outside, Mark Grayson couldn't help but ask the Omni-Man, is the planet Sexa attacked? Yes, they are coming. Peter, who had remained silent, knew that the they that the Omni-Man was talking about must be the other Vitrum people. Turning his eyes to the chaotic Sexa people outside, Peter said to Mark, Bomb, and Way, Mark, Bomb, and Way, you guys should hide quickly and take the Queen of Sexa with you. Peter looked at Amber, who was holding the purple-skinned boy, and asked several people to protect Amber and hide. "Yes, Dad, I understand." Hearing Peter calling their names, the two marks responded in unison. Then the two turned their heads and looked at each other, seeing the embarrassment in each other's eyes. Seeing Peter take the initiative to let his children protect Amber, the Omni-Man's impression of Peter changed a little. "Thank you." After thanking Peter, the all-powerful man walked quickly to his wife and said to him, "Follow Mark and the others and leave here. Go to the safe place you know. Don't come out until you are sure of safety, but, Nolan, go." Although the all-powerful man was reluctant to leave his wife and children in this world, he still gently pushed him towards Peter for the safety of both of them. Although he didn't trust Peter and this big family, he didn't worry that his wife and son would encounter any danger if Mark was there. "Let's go, Ms. Amber." Farm Mark came over and said to her, "I will protect you and leave." Mark Grayson also came over with Bayo and Wei, and the group prepared to leave here. Under the leadership of the female leader Amber, Bayo and his group came to a cave hidden in the mountains. After the female leader entered the cave, she immediately placed her palm on the operating machine placed at the door. As the palm fingerprint was successfully verified, the crystal stone in the cave immediately emitted a strong light. The strong light immediately illuminated the entire cave. "What is this place?" Curious, Bomb looked at the layout of the cave and asked Amber. Amber said to her, "This is Lachlan's cave." "Who left this relic?" "An explorer." "I don't know. Whenever my people are in danger, we will come to this cave for shelter. We are safe here," Amber said to Bomb while holding the child. Mark Grayson, who had remained silent, looked at the child in the arms of Amber, the mother, and asked her with mixed feelings, "What is his name?" Amber adjusted the purple-skinned baby in her arms. Although it is the offspring of the Vitrum people and the Mantis people, this baby has almost the same characteristics as humans except that his skin is purple. In fact, he has no name. Amber, holding the baby, said to Mark Grayson, "When our children grow up, they will choose their own names. The lifespan of the sexes is different from yours. They can only live for 1 year." 1 year? Mark Grayson's face showed an unbelievable look. Bomb, Wei and Mark were also shocked. There are alien intelligent creatures in this world that have a lifespan of 1 year. Do they have to accept their own death in just 1 year? Bomb and the others suddenly felt heavy. Mark Grayson was stunned for a long time and asked the other party again, 1 year? Is this true? Yes, 1 year, but I never think 1 year is too short. I heard Nolan say that we are faster than you humans in some aspects, such as growth, learning, and, Amber paused, a smile appeared on the corner of her mouth, and she looked at the baby in her arms. And love. Hearing Amber say the word love, Bomb, Wei and the two marks present were all stunned. Amber didn't seem to notice the expressions of the crowd. She continued, "Your father's genes seem to have continued our son's growth, but I feel like he may speak at any time now. Nolan and I are not what you think." Mark Grayson looked at each other through his glasses and said, "I don't know what you mean. I mean, I didn't deliberately try to replace your mother knowingly." "I'm sorry." Mark Grayson heard Amber's apology, exhaled slightly, and said a little frustrated, "I didn't mean that." Amber held the baby and sat on the stone chair in the cave. She looked up at the slightly frustrated Mark Grayson and said, "Your father saved my life and the lives of many others. At first we didn't understand him, and he was deeply hurt. I think, after experiencing everything on Earth, he completely closed himself off. Before he knew his past, I had fallen in love with him. Before I knew about your mother's existence, I had already." She paused. "By the way, how do you say that human idiom? Is it desperate?" Seeing that the other party said the wrong idiom, Mark corrected her speechlessly. "Shen, means risking one's life." After correcting, Mark Grayson looked at Bayo, Wei and Mark. "We have children here, you don't need to talk about adult topics." Hearing adult topics, Wei, who was listening, coughed awkwardly. Although she thought she was mature enough, she couldn't help but feel embarrassed when she heard such topics. Wei was about to ask Amber some questions when a boom sound suddenly came from outside. Then the cave shook, and the soil and gravel fell down clattering. Amber, holding the baby, immediately stood up and asked Wei nervously and anxiously, "What happened?" "I don't know, let's go out first." Wei pulled Amber to leave the cave. But the next second, a figure flew into the cave. With a boom, the flying shadow fell heavily on the ground, shaking the cave and splashing a lot of dust. "So this is true. The great Nolan had a child with an Earth woman," a deep voice came. After the dust gradually disappeared, A sturdy black-skinned guy wearing a light blue uniform slowly walked out. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 648, The Invincible Young Hero Defeated by a Finger. Who are you? Mark Grayson stepped back cautiously, clenched his fist and asked the other party. Bao also took out the bang-bang gun at the fastest speed. Wei pressed the switch of the automatic boxing gloves, and the boxing gloves instantly covered her hands. Mark also took out his wand and looked at the guy who suddenly appeared with bad intentions with a bad expression. The sturdy black man looked at Mark, who was wearing an invincible young man uniform and glasses, and said to him, I am a Vitram person, just like your father. If you are brave and good at fighting, maybe we may let you join the Empire, kid. Mark Grayson raised his fist and asked the other party, what if I say no, then you will die? I don't think so. Mark Grayson clenched his fist and warned the other party, if you dare to take half a step forward, I will not hold back on you. Bang, the air exploded, and as soon as Mark Grayson finished speaking, he was slapped against the wall by the black man who moved at super high speed. After knocking Mark Grayson away, the black man saw clearly that behind him were Wei, Mark, and Ember and the child in her arms. Seeing another Mark appear in front of him, he showed a look of astonishment on his face. How could there be two Marks? Did Nolan give birth to two humans of mixed blood with Earth on Earth? The sturdy black man thought that the omnipotent man might have an extra child. Then he looked at Amber, female mantis man, and the child in her arms, with a look of disgust on his face. Hey, brother, Black Vitram, I think I heard something extraordinary. Before he could react to what was going on, Bomb had already raised his gun. The blue-haired lolly always took the initiative to deal with the enemy. Bang! 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 Bullets were fired from Bomb's bang-bang gun, and in a very short time, all poured into the black man's body. But contrary to Bomb's expectations, the bullets were blocked by the opponent's body. It was like a bullet shot at a steel plate, falling down with a clang. Glancing at Baku, who was shooting with his gun, the black man sneered and rushed towards Baku at super speed. Seeing that Baku was about to be hurt, at the critical moment, Wei shouted angrily and rushed to Baku with gloves raised. A dull bang sound came, and the black man's fist hit Wei's gloves. The powerful force directly knocked Wei out. Bang! Wei's body hit the ground heavily and rolled out along the ground. Petrify all. On the other side, Mark saw Wei being knocked away, and his blood surged. He pointed his magic wand at the black man and chanted the petrification spell. Seeing Mark using the magic wand to cast a spell on himself, the black man realized the power of the magic contained in the magic wand and took it a little more seriously. Instead of taking the magic with his body, he dodged Mark's magic attack and rushed towards Mark at super speed. The guy who posed the greatest threat to him at the scene, besides the invincible young man, was the guy who controlled magic, so he had to get rid of this wizard version of the invincible young man first. Seeing that the black man was about to rush to Mark Grayson rushed over and knocked the black man to the ground. With a bang, the two rolled out along the ground. The two people who rolled out along the ground quickly got up. Run! Mark Grayson shouted to several people and attacked the black man with his fists. The lightning-like fists hit the black man heavily. Every punch seemed to carry a powerful fist, but it was easily dodged by the Vitram people in front of him. Then the black man hit Mark Grayson's head with a powerful iron fist from top to bottom. With a bang, Mark was knocked to the ground heavily, and blood kept flowing out of his mouth and nose. Are you sure you are Nolan's son? The black man panted slightly and looked down at Mark Grayson from above. Mark struggled to stand up, but just as he raised his head, the black man pressed him down with a finger. Are you sure he's his son, not an insect like these creatures? The black man squatted down and asked him with a sneer, while pressing him down with a finger. The hard stone ground was crushed by Mark Grayson's head and continued to dent. Mark Grayson, feeling the pain, hammered the ground with his hands and screamed in pain. Seeing this scene, Bomb and Mark anxiously pointed their weapons at the black man, ready to attack him. But before the two of them launched an attack on the black superpower, they saw a familiar figure entering the cave. With a loud bang, the black man who used his fingers to press Mark Grayson to the ground was hit directly against the wall by the figure who suddenly broke in. The sound of boom collapsed in the cave, and smoke filled the cave. Dad, seeing Peter appear, Boom and Mark shouted in surprise. As long as Dad stepped in, the matter could be solved. This was the common conclusion of the two. Now seeing Peter appear, the two finally let go of their worries. Mark Grayson, who was lying on the ground, raised his head and looked at Peter with swollen eyes. A familiar figure slowly walked towards him. He took a breath, wiped the blood off his face, and was full of strength again. He didn't expect Peter to appear. If it was Mr. Patrick, it should be fine. After knocking the black man away, Peter first used the rune to heal the wound of the injured Wei. Fortunately, Wei's injury was not serious, just a little injury to the shoulder. After using the rune to heal Wei's wound, Peter walked to Mark Grayson and stretched out his hand to pull him up. Thank you, Mr. Patrick." Mark Grayson wiped the blood from his nose and mouth, and thanked Peter excitedly. "You're welcome, Mark." As Peter spoke, he cast his eyes on the black-skinned Vitram who slowly stood up from the ground. "Who are you?" The black man covered his injured chest and asked Peter in shock. Peter's speed just now was incomparable to him. He had never seen such a fast speed. "Peter Patrick." Peter shook his head and said, "I am the father of these children. You just hurt them. Let's settle the score." Settle the score? After hearing Peter's words, the black man showed a look of contempt on his face. "What score do you want to settle with me? Do you think your strength can surpass mine? I am a Vitram, a great conquering race, and you, I can feel that you are just a weak earthling." Peter nodded and said, "I am indeed an earthling." Mark and his friends looked at their father who suddenly appeared nervously. Amber and her son, who were hiding in a corner, also prayed for Peter in fear and anxiety. After talking to the black man, Peter stopped talking nonsense with him. He approached him at super speed and punched him in the chin. The fist hit with all its strength, making a bang sound that pierced the air. The black man, who was unable to react in time, was beaten back 2 steps. Peter took advantage of the situation and moved forward, grabbed the other's neck, and threw him out in the other's incredulous eyes. Bang! The black man's body hit the stone pillar, smashing it to pieces, and then hit the wall with the remaining force. The rock wall made a loud boom sound, and a sunken hole was knocked out. The Vitram man thrown out by Peter slowly slid down the rock wall under the huge force. Kneeling on one knee on the ground, the black man held his aching arm and gasped. He kept gasping for breath, and blood kept flowing from his nose. His body had already sent him an alarm. "If this is the power of you Vitram people, I can only say that I am very disappointed. If you don't want your tribe to be humiliated by you, then attack me and let me see your methods." Shocked by the power and speed shown by Peter, the black man was also angered by Peter's words. He stood up and rushed towards Peter. Peter dodged to the side and raised his hand to the opponent who was flying over. Raising his fist, Peter aimed at the stunned Vitram man and swung it hard. Bang! Peter's punch was quite powerful. The black man's nose was hit hard by the punch, and he couldn't control his body and fell backwards to the ground. He was knocked down again, and he let out a low roar like an angry beast. After roaring, the black man stood up and rushed towards Peter again. As a result, he was hit in the cheek by Peter's fist again. With a dull bang, the black man's body rolled and hit a pile of stones, making a deafening sound that echoed in the space. The stone fragments were thrown into the air and fell everywhere. The black man felt a sharp pain in his shoulder, and his back felt like being stabbed by a needle. Enduring the pain, he barely stood up. But the next second, Peter grabbed a sharp stalagmite in the cave and pierced him. Puff! Peter grabbed the sharp stalagmite and stabbed it towards the black man's stomach. Under the powerful force, he directly hit the opponent backwards against the wall. With a splash of blood, the stalagmite directly penetrated the opponent's body and broke the opponent's defense. The black man, who was nailed to the wall by the stalagmite and felt a sharp pain, looked at his bloody abdomen, then looked at the expressionless Peter, spit out a mouthful of blood, and closed his eyes unwillingly. Dad, seeing that Peter killed the other party in a few seconds, Bao came over excitedly and hugged Peter, not caring that there was still some blood on his clothes. The female mantis man stood out from the corner and walked towards Peter with a child in her arms. Mark Grayson looked at Peter with a dull face. He didn't expect that Mr. Patrick, who came to save him, would be so powerful. Chapter 649, Invincible Young Hero, Why Don't You Marry My Mother? Can you still walk by yourself, Wei? Peter looked at Wei, who was supported by Boom and Mark, and walked over to ask her. Yes, I can, Dad, I'm fine, just some minor injuries. This guy can't make me unable to stand up. Wei said that her injuries were not serious, and proudly said that she would not lose to the other party. "You don't look like you can walk by yourself." Peter reached out and scratched Wei's nose, who was pretending to be strong, and then carried his daughter on his back despite Wei's objection. "I'm your father, and the little details when you lie can't escape my eyes, such as the last time you secretly went to ride Buckbeak," Peter said to Wei while holding her up. Peter was talking to Wei when Amber came over with a baby boy in her arms and thanked him. "Thank you, sir, you and your children saved me." Peter glanced at the purple-skinned baby in her arms and replied, "You're welcome. Are you not hurt?" "We are fine, thank you so much. If you hadn't come, I don't know what would have happened to us." Amber hugged the baby boy tightly and thanked Peter gratefully. Mark Grayson wiped the blood off his face and walked to Peter. He was a little depressed. He was not the opponent of the Vitrum man. If Mr. Patrick hadn't appeared in the end, I'm afraid he would have been killed by the other party. "I'm sorry, Mr. Patrick," Mark Grayson apologized to Peter. I didn't protect everyone." Peter looked at Mark, sighed and said, "No, you have tried your best, but sometimes, when facing your enemy, if you don't want to make people regret it, you have to go all out." "Right, Mark," Peter reminded him, "sometimes, you can't show mercy, otherwise you will end up hurting yourself." "I know, Mr. Patrick." Mark Grayson nodded and fell into a state of thought. Planet Sexa, inside the palace building. The two Vitrum people who arrived here, a man and a woman, have been in a fierce battle with the Omniman. The Vitrum people with golden hair and a mustache punched the Omniman. The Omniman dodged the opponent's attack, grabbed the opponent's uniform, and threw him to the ground. After throwing the enemy out, the Omniman kicked the ground with dents with his feet, concentrated his strength and legs, and flew straight forward along the ground. Chasing after the opponent, the Omniman punched the opponent's chin and smashed him to the ground. With a loud bang, the male Vitrum fell heavily to the ground. "Victor, you can't beat me." After speaking harshly to Victor, another female Vitrum with long silver hair tied into a whip rushed towards him. The female Vitrum in the form of an old woman slaughtered many sexes, and the Omniman was instantly hated. Turning around, he was about to catch the attack of the female Vitrum, but was knocked away by Victor, who came in a flash. "Huh?" On the ground, he spat out a mouthful of blood near his gums, and the Omniman fixed his teeth. Even in such an environment, he still maintained a calm mood. "It is impossible for you two to beat me alone." The Omniman glanced at Azu and Clark, and said to the two people in the air, "Besides, this time, here, there are opponents who are more difficult to deal with than me waiting for you." On the other side, after knocking the sturdy Weak-Sing man away, Azu did not pursue him. He stared at him like a prey. "If this is the strength of you guys, you can't conquer the Earth," Azu said in a low and confident voice. "The guys on your planet are all weaklings. And you are the same." Facing Azu's ridicule, the Weak-Sing man rushed up to attack angrily. Azu fought back to block the opponent's attack. The Weak-Sing man immediately changed his tactics, and his left fist was at a strange angle, attacking Azu's chin like lightning. Azu completely ignored the opponent's attack and couldn't even stagger back. Instead, his punches and kicks were powerful. The fists carrying powerful force exploded the air in front of him and then hit the opponent's body. The Weak-Sing man was completely at a disadvantage. Azu, who had experienced countless battles, had experience that allowed him to completely suppress ordinary Weak-Sing people. He could easily suppress them without using the trident. Clark on the other side also faced a Weak-Sing man. The sturdy Weak-Sing man suddenly grabbed Clark's arm with his right hand, and then pulled him towards himself. While pulling Clark, he twisted his body. Tang! The Weak-Sing man took advantage of the moment when Clark's body turned to him, grabbed his arm, roared, and hugged him in his arms. Clark didn't feel very good to be held by a strong man. Feeling uncomfortable was secondary, and the most important thing was that he felt a little nauseous. When he was about to take action, the Weak-Sing man held Clark so that he couldn't break free, and flew rapidly into the sky. In a short moment, the two flew into the atmosphere. After flying out of the atmosphere, the Weak-Sing man grabbed Clark and roared, and rushed towards the ground. Hua! As the Weak-Sing man roared, the two continued to accelerate. The air was squeezed away, and they fled in all directions. The two were like a meteor falling from the sky. Clark and the Weak-Sing man's throw on the earth immediately attracted everyone's attention. The V-Star warriors, Omni-Man, Sexa, Raven and Loki, who were fighting, opened their mouths in surprise when they saw this scene. Star-Lord was a little worried about Clark's safety, so he went to help. However, before he could get there, the meteor hit the ground heavily. Boom! A deafening sound rang out, and the meteor hit the ground, causing the ground to shake violently, and smoke and dust spread. A large pit appeared on the ground. When the smoke cleared, everyone saw Clark standing up intact, while the V-Star who was holding him was already lying in the pit, dying. Victor, who was fighting with Omni-Man, saw this scene, took a deep breath and asked Omni-Man, "Who are they?" "The son of Patrick," Omni-Man said as he accelerated towards him. Grabbing Victor's arm and throwing him into the air, Omni-Man immediately flew towards him. Boom, the air exploded. Omni-Man knocks Vito to the other side, and then follows closely, hitting him several times in a row, causing him to continue flying backwards. Eventually, the two of them pass through a city, and Omni-Man knocks Vito through a building and slams him to the ground. Countless buildings begin to slide, and rubble and dirt fall down in a crushing manner. Omni-Man, who is standing on the ground, reaches out and punches the largest building that has fallen into multiple pieces. On the other side, Vito, who is lying on the ground, stands up, looks at Omni-Man with anger, and then lifts a huge rock and flies towards him with a bang. Omni-Man turns around and sees a huge rock coming at him. He reacts quickly and punches the rock to break it, but the next second Vito rushes from behind and punches. Omni-Man grabs Vito's arm and throws him to the ground before he can punch. "Okay, I'm really tired of this shit, it's time to end it all, once and for all," Omni-Man grits his teeth and says to him. With a loud bang, the air exploded, and the enraged Omni-Man grabbed the opponent's arm and slammed his head into him. Bang! As Victor was dizzy from the impact, Omni-Man grabbed the metal building materials at hand and stabbed at him. Although Victor tried to dodge, a part of the metal spike eventually pierced his cheek. But he successfully avoided most of the metal spikes, so the spikes did not seriously injure him. Despite this, Victor no longer had the desire to fight. Knowing that he was no match for Omni-Man, he just wanted to escape from here. Seeing that the opponent wanted to escape, Omni-Man quickly flew in front of her, grabbed his arm, and ripped it off with a crack. Blood splattered, and Victor screamed in pain. Screaming, he retreated and fell to the ground, blood gushing from his now open cheek, making him unable to speak. "What did I just say?" Omni-Man said as he walked over and grabbed his broken arm. "You are no match for me, Victor. If I want, I can easily kill you." Swoosh! As soon as the words fell, a sound piercing the air sounded behind him. The all-round man grabbed the silver braid of the female Weaksing who was attacking him and pulled her over. With a dull bang, he punched the opponent's jaw off. Blood spurted out from the female Weaksing's chin. The female Weaksing who lost her jaw screamed even louder. At the same time, Peter was rushing towards the palace with Mark and others. Looking forward at Peter holding Amber, Mark Grayson asked him hesitantly, "Mr. Patrick, why would you help them? I mean, why would you help the people of the planet Sexa?" Peter looked back and said to him, "Because I was called to help by a guy named Nerzo. Besides, although you said you would not help and draw a line with your father, you will definitely not stand idly by, right?" Mark Grayson was slightly stunned after hearing what Peter said. Did Mr. Patrick see through his thoughts? He said a little embarrassedly, "Maybe." Staring at Peter's back, he suddenly thought of something. Mr. Patrick seemed to be from Vitrum, and he didn't look old at such an old age. Now my mother is in a very bad mental state and cries every day. Should I introduce Mr. Patrick to her? Anyway, Mr. Peter is single. My mother can also get out of this bad mental state. Chapter 650, Riven, what does my father's immortality represent? But Mark soon felt that his thoughts were too irrational and incorrect. His biological father was still alive and they had not divorced. Although his biological father had found a mistress and gave birth to a younger brother for him, he should not do such a thing just because the other party did something wrong. Mark Grayson couldn't help but blame himself. Besides, his mother might not have such an idea. After thinking about it in his heart, Mark Grayson took a deep breath, forced himself to pull his thoughts back, and flew forward to catch up with Peter. At the palace of the planet Sexa, the Vitrum people had to get on the spaceship and evacuate the planet in a mess after throwing away several corpses. When Peter and Mark arrived, they saw the devastated buildings, the bodies of countless Sexes lying on the ground, the Omni-Men standing silently in front of the bodies, and Raven, Clark and Azu, Loki, Star-Lord, Tom and other people from the Patrick family. Mark Grayson glanced at the bodies of the Sexes, hesitated, and walked behind the Omni-Men. Although he had decided not to have any more dealings with his father, he couldn't help but come up to him and said, Dad. The Omni-Man seemed not to have heard what Mark Grayson said, and his head was lowered and his body was shaking. Gritting his teeth, he suddenly turned around and stretched out his hand to grab Mark. With a bang, Mark Grayson's throat was grabbed by the Omniman. The feeling of suffocation immediately hit him, and waves of unspeakable pain came to him from his throat. Seeing Mark Grayson suddenly being attacked, Mark, who was standing behind Peter, couldn't help but want to stand up and stop him. Although he felt a little weird about this alien isomorph with the same name as himself, he felt that Mark in this world was a good person. And he was a superhero who insisted on justice in his heart. Now seeing this scene, he subconsciously wanted to stand up and stop the Omniman. However, before he could make a move, Raven next to him pulled him back, shook her head slightly at Mark, and signaled him not to be impulsive. After understanding Raven's eyes, Mark's inner impulse was instantly suppressed. He looked at the other Mark who was being strangled. Why? The Omniman strangled Mark Grayson's neck, a look of pain on his face, and asked him, "Why do I care about them?" Pointing at the body of the sexer, he seemed to be questioning Mark Grayson, and also seemed to be questioning himself. They are weak, their lives are short, and they can barely be considered a species. I don't care about them, and I shouldn't care about them. With a throat being strangled by the Omniman, Mark Grayson stretched out his hands and held his father's arms with both hands. The Omniman did not use force when pinching his arm, otherwise the other party could have twisted his neck in one go. That doesn't mean they deserve to die, Mark Grayson said to him with a slight breath. No, the Omniman was like an angry lion for a moment, and his voice was filled with uncontrollable pain. No, I shouldn't have this feeling. This feeling is not better, it almost destroys my spirit all the time. As he roared, the strength in his hands gradually increased. Mark Grayson, who felt truly suffocated, endured the discomfort and continued to speak his mind to the other party. This is how you should have felt on Earth. Hearing Mark Grayson's words, the expression on the face of the Almighty Man became dull for a moment. Yes, this is clearly how he should have felt on Earth. Why didn't he feel this way when he killed the Earthlings? When did he have feelings that he shouldn't have? He slowly loosened his hand that was pinching his son's neck and lowered his head to look at the sexes outside. I'm sorry, Mark. Sometimes, I can't control my emotions. I don't know why I feel this way. The Almighty Man apologized to Mark Grayson. I'm sorry, I almost made an irreparable mistake. I will kill them and avenge the sexes. I don't know if the Almighty Man said this to himself or to Mark. Cough cough, covering his neck, Mark Grayson coughed hard. He couldn't control his emotions and pinched his neck. Is there anyone who would cheat his son like this? Seeing that the Almighty Man's expression had calmed down, his wife came over with a child in her arms. Amber narrated the scene in the cave to him. After hearing this, the Omniman came over to thank Peter with mixed feelings. Although he was quite annoyed about Loki pretending to be Mark just now. But considering that Peter saved his wife and children, he decided not to pursue it. Walking in front of Peter, the Omniman, who looked like the boss of Spider-Man's newspaper, extended his hand to Peter. Thank you, Peter Patrick, thank you for saving my wife and son. He glanced at the corpses of the sexes all over the ground. If it weren't for you and your children, this city would be destroyed, and more sexes would die. He had a complicated expression on his face. The Vitrum people will not give up. They failed this time, and next time, they will come back, but I don't know what the result will be next time. Anyway, thank you for your help and your children. The Omniman thanked Peter again. He regarded Peter as himself in a parallel world. He now had a strong curiosity about the other self. Could it be that the other self in the parallel universe has a stronger power than himself? And the other self is not only powerful, but also has extraordinary talents in giving birth and educating children? Not only Homelander and Superman, but also the strength shown by Raven, Star-Lord, and Loki in the battle with the Vision soldiers just now shocked him. The magic released by Raven through the magic wand and the godly power of Star-Lord made him feel that he was in contact with a strange power of another different world. Although he wanted to ask Peter how he did it, he finally suppressed his curiosity. There is a long way to go. After Peter finished talking with Omni-Man, he glared at Loki. He found that this guy was increasingly not taking him, his father, in his eyes. He dared to use illusion to transform into Mark's appearance and jump in front of Omni-Man. Fortunately, this kid met the weakened Omni-Man now. If he met the insidious and cruel Omni-Man during the Earth period, wouldn't he be killed directly? Loki, come over and talk to us. Hearing Peter's voice, looking up and seeing Peter's eyes seem to have an expression of wanting to deal with him, Loki's heart jumped. I just hope my father won't send me back. Loki kept praying in his heart. Half an hour later, after everyone left, Tom cast his eyes on the body of the Vitrum on the ground and narrowed his eyes. The next day, what Loki feared did not happen in the end. Peter just scolded him and announced that from today on, he would not be allowed to enter Asgard for 3 months. Although Loki felt a little sorry for not being able to enter the World Tree and watch the drama with the Asgardians who moved from the Marvel world, he still breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, his father did not deprive him of his inheritance rights like he did to Hela and Black Robe Azu, throwing his horn crown into another world and then exiling him. At the gate of the palace, Peter and his party are ready to leave the planet Sexa and go to this world's Earth to take a look. Anyway, there is plenty of time during the holidays and there is nothing to do on the farm, so there is no rush to go back. I don't think I can leave yet. Mark Grayson scratched his head and said to Omni-Man and Amber, there are still many things to do, such as rebuilding the city. Amber, holding the baby, said to him, no, your help is not needed here, Mark, the people on Earth need your strength. Mark replied, there are many heroes on Earth, I'm sure they will protect the Earth well. Queen Amber shook her head, that's not necessarily true. She paused and continued, Mark, I must ask you for a favor. What? Amber glanced at Omni-Man, and after getting a nod of encouragement from her husband, she handed the baby in her hand to Mark. Take your brother back to Earth with you. What? Mark looked at her in shock. But he is your child and you are his mother, Amber said helplessly. Mark, look at me, I have aged a lot in 2 days. Your brother ages faster than you, but much slower than my people. By the time he can speak complete sentences, I will be gone. Nolan could have raised him, but he has enemies to deal with. Your brother and everyone he knows here will die soon. Before he comes of age, he will go through several generations. Which mother would be willing to abandon her child and let him live that kind of life? Amber's eyes flashed with tenderness as she looked at her husband, the almighty man. Nolan changed me. Now my view of the length of life is longer than that of most Sexer people, but to me, your human century is still just a concept. For you and your brother, that is the life you must live. Mark Grayson looked at Amber, his heart heavy and he suddenly didn't know what to say. Amber kissed the baby's forehead gently and said, please remember me, child. I hope you will understand why I let you leave me. I love you. I hope you will remember your former mother in the future. Raven, who was listening to Amber's words, felt worse. She glanced at Peter. Father must be one of those immortal people. Would he also feel pain when he saw the people he knew leave one after another? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.